What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 1 Chain. Chapter 1. The first appearance is so exciting. Advertise here. Above the East China Sea, the blue sky was as clear as water. Suddenly, a cloud gathered like ink stains. Immediately afterwards, a bolt of thunder split the sky like a giant dragon and landed directly on an unknown island harbor. As the saying goes, there was a loud bang in the sky. Water. I want water. Tren was lying on a wooden board like a squid, and the thirst in his throat made him keep groping with his hands. Suddenly, his left hand seemed to be holding an object similar to a guardrail, so he half supported his body with difficulty and leaned against it. The hand that crossed the guardrail was about to touch a touch of coolness, like a sudden rain after a long drought. Water. Tren subconsciously used his hand as a cup, scooped up some, and couldn't wait to put it into his mouth. However, the expected cool and thirst-quenching feeling did not arrive, but the salty smell unique to the sea hit Tianling like a tide. Bah, bah, bah. It's so salty. This time, like an enlightenment, Tren's head suddenly cleared up. Although the sea water was not drinkable, it made his mouth moist again. After waking up, Tren looked blankly at the surrounding environment and the boat he was on. His head was buzzing for a while. Where is this? Wasn't I struck by lightning? According to common sense, I can't. Should I stay in the ICU and then have my friends and family eat well? As he spoke, Terran's eyes moved to the steps at the stern of the boat, where there was a drawer-like locker. Forget it, let's see what's there first. At the worst, I'll give you some money later. Tren's throat rolled, he swallowed, and then reached out and opened the storage point. Immediately afterwards, several red apples, a kettle, a map and a sharp dagger appeared in front of him. Sure enough, there is water. Tren's eyes were immediately attracted to the kettle, as if he had discovered a clear spring in the desert. He couldn't wait to unscrew the lid and drink it in big gulps. The cool liquid moistened his dry throat and restored his energy a little. I'm alive, I'm alive. Tren put down the kettle and felt relieved. Water is indeed the source of life. Putting down the kettle, Tren picked up the map and wanted to see where he was. However, he saw that most of the map was sea area, especially the two cross-like avenues crossing in the center, dividing the sea area into 4 parts. The islands on the map are filled with strange symbols and unknown marks. This layout. Tren frowned and thought. This map seemed not to be anywhere on the Earth that he was familiar with, or he believed in his conjecture more than the Earth. There was no other reason than that his eyes fell on a red circle on the map, with the landmark, Kingdom of Goa, written inside the circle. Goa Kingdom, Windmill Village, plus the East China Sea. Tren murmured to himself, feeling uneasy in his heart. He looked up and looked around. Except for the small island in front of him, he could only see a vast and boundless sea. The boat was swaying gently in the wind and was fixed in the harbor. This is the world of One Piece. After reacting, Tren took a deep breath and tried to calm down. Although he rarely watches One Piece, he is still aware of the 3 major comics, let alone this fierce pirate world. He doesn't believe that the so-called pirates here are as adventurous as Luffy. Yes, the boy's real name is Tiransu, which is similar to Milk Deluxe, but because of his experience of being called Milk Brother in junior high and high school, he prefers to call himself Tiransu. As for why I was struck by lightning, well, as the saying goes, leaning against the window in the back row is the king's hometown, and leaning against the trees on rainy days is the king's way. But the important thing now is not why I was struck by lightning, but what to do. Thinking of this, Tren picked up the dagger and held it tightly, as if this sharp weapon could bring him a sense of security. But this so-called sense of security was fleeting, because Tren discovered a more serious problem. Yes. The ship he was on seemed vaguely familiar. The hull is like a coffin, with 2 candles on both sides glowing with green fire, and the sail is similar to a cross structure. That's right. This is the founder of Black Knife Rowing. He doesn't look at the driver's direction, and the direction depends entirely on the waves. It's the car of the King's Eagle Eye. Is it so exciting for the first time? Thinking of this, Tren stood up and said, no wonder it is such a small ship with only 1 locker and no oars. Black Knife. It turns out that it was taken away by Hawkeye. No, it's better to get off the boat now. Quote. As a result, just when Tren wanted to get off the boat and land on the island, a man stood on the highest point of the uphill slope not far away. He has short black hair, piercing yellow eyes, and a short beard. Plus wearing a black top hat decorated with white fluff, a burgundy patterned shirt, a black windbreaker, white trousers and black short boots. There is a cross knife hanging on his chest, and behind his back is the black knife known as the strongest in the world, Yi. However, there is an extra small baggage, which must be the supplies he bought specially when he got off the ship. Looking at that man, Tren's face was as solid as iron, as heavy as if it could crush a mountain. Jorakal Mahawk. At the same time that Tren saw Hawkeye, Hawkeye also saw this guy coming off his ship. At this time, Tren was almost 1.9 meters tall, with a build similar to that of Ace, with short black hair. I don't know if it was because of the thunder tempering, but he didn't originally look like this. Are you a stupid little thief? I didn't expect that he actually stole into my boat. Hawkeye murmured, and then slowly walked towards it, not in a hurry, as if in his eyes Tren would die sooner or later, it would all be death. On the other side, Watching Hawkeye slowly walking towards him and still some distance away, Tren couldn't help but said in a deep voice, "I know you are here, system. Brother, don't be ridiculous, people are really going to die now. Just say something." Seeing that no one responded in his mind, Tren broke out in a cold sweat. "Beep. System number 35614 is at your service, dear traveler." Who? Hearing this beautiful voice, Tren breathed a sigh of relief, so he quickly said, "Now is the emergency, don't talk nonsense, what are the functions, or the novice gift package will be thrown directly in my face. That'll be great. This system is a summoning partner system. Due to the recent severe crackdown on the system, it is prohibited to sell dog meat at the expense of others, so there is no store in this system, but a gift will be given randomly when summoned. As for host, your novice gift package is a free summoning opportunity. Warm reminder that all characters summoned are related to the host's mental state. Exception, except for product after sales issues, this system will not answer any questions in the future. Close black lens bracket. Summon partners based on my mental state." Looking at the text that appeared in the system interface, Tren suddenly breathed a sigh of relief and raised the corners of his mouth slightly. "Isn't that invincible? People like me, who have a different mentality, are strong in their own right. After all, only the strong will cherish each other." Thinking of this, Tren smiled slightly. Then, he whispered, "Summon." As soon as he finished speaking, something like a magic circle flashed in Tren's mind, and then a dark shadow of a man appeared. This tall and mighty figure, this figure with a sword on one side. Yes, he is a hot man. Chapter 2 Li, the first swordsman of the Shang dynasty. Advertise here. Congratulations on getting your first partner, but because its ability is at the conceptual level. Therefore, considering the current world, the intensity of new world rules is reduced, and one word will be deleted from its conceptual ability entry. Close black lens bracket. At this time, Eagle Eye had already walked calmly from the top of the slope to the island harbor. Looking at the young man standing on his boat, his eyes narrowed slightly, and his yellow pupils like an eagle trembled slightly. The lockers on his boat have been opened, and even the kettle has been thrown aside. Good guy. Noticing the Hawkeye gaze, Tren lowered his head and saw that in this scene, he was like a piece of yellow mud falling off his crotch, either shit or shit. This is an accident, do you believe it? Tren looked at Hawkeye who had walked 10 meters in front of him and smiled slightly. Looking at Tren, Hawkeye remained expressionless, and then the baggage he was holding on to supplies dropped to his feet with a bang. He raised his right hand slightly and grasped the hilt of the black sword Yi behind him. This is the first time I've met a thief since I went to sea. Do you want to bring fame to yourself? Hawkeye said calmly. Stealing his Hawkeye's ship equals looking down on the world's greatest swordsman equals looking down on the swordsman equals looking down on him Jorikor. Mahawk. Didn't I just drink a few sips of your water without giving you a chance to explain? Looking at this situation, everyone in Tren was numb. Do you care so much about your character? But that's right. Crick was chased from the Grand Line to the East China Sea just because he saw someone rowing at night with a black knife. As a result, there was only one ship left in the fleet of 5,000 people. Pay the price for your actions. Before he finished speaking, Hawkeye drew his knife and flashed. A green light flashed across like lightning. Trent couldn't see this set of actions at all. Just when Trent thought he was finished, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. He just raised his right hand and used his index and middle fingers to catch the black knife that was coming towards Hawkeye. Knight. Hey, what do you want to do to the captain, you rude guy? Li Jing was dressed in the purple robe of the ancient Shang dynasty. The ancient sword hanging on the side of his waist exuded simplicity, and his eyes were fixed on the eagle eye. At this time, Hawkeye, who was holding a long knife in his hand and trying to slash at Tren, his originally calm face suddenly lost its calmness, because he was shocked to find that the man in front of him could easily stop him with only 2 fingers. Own attack. Blocked. Seeing this, Hawkeye immediately drew his sword and slashed several times in succession like a gust of wind. Seeing Hawkeye launching another attack, Li Jing had a strange expression on his face, and then his bitch-eye right hand received his attacks one by one at an extremely weird speed. Who are you? After being completely blocked again, Hawkeye quickly jumped back to distance himself, staring at Li Jing like a hawk. Just now, he actually had the illusion that his apprentice was challenging his master. It was as if all his sword skills were invisible. But he is the world's best swordsman, Jorikor. Mahawk. He is not an apprentice at a kendo gym. Not only was Hawkeye confused, Tren was also confused, especially when he looked at Li Jing's character card. Name. Li Jing from 100,000 Bad Jokes. Ability. 100% ability to catch a sword with bare hands. Strength. The best swordsman in the Shang dynasty. Close black lens bracket. So the system just prompted that the word deleted from the ability entry was the word, be. From 100% being caught with bare hands, to 100% being caught with empty hands. Holy shit, it changed directly from control to defense. Thinking of this, Tren's expression when he looked at Hawkeye suddenly changed, the corners of his mouth gradually rose like a crescent moon, and he said happily, Li Jing, you are back. Hearing Tren's voice, Li Jing raised the corners of his mouth, showed a smile, nodded and said, Captain. Captain. Hearing the conversation between the two, Hawkeye's eyes darkened slightly, and he thought to himself, isn't this young man a thief? Mahawk. Now that Li Jing's identity arranged by the system has been confirmed, he is also happy to accept this setting. It just so happened that he had no interest in pirates or marines, so being an adventurer was not a bad idea. Let me reintroduce myself, my name is. As he spoke, Tren suddenly got stuck because he realized that in the world of One Piece, names usually have prefixes. But since he had traveled through time in the flesh, how should he give himself a suitable name? Suddenly, Tren had an idea. My name is Tron. A passing adventurer. This is my deputy captain, the #1 swordsman of the Shang dynasty, Chantangwan Li Jing. Tren also introduced Li Jing's name loudly. Adventurer. After hearing Tren's introduction, Hawkeye already understood. After all, the sea is not just full of pirates. Before Roger One Piece started the Age of Discovery, adventurers were the most common type on the sea. But compared to Tren, he is now more interested in this so-called first swordsman of the Shang dynasty. A swordsman who can easily block all his attacks has greatly increased his interest. This is much more interesting than red hair. I didn't expect that this time when I came to the East China Sea to look for red hair, I would have this opportunity. Mahawk, you don't want to fight anymore, do you? Seeing that Hawkeye had no intention of sheathing the knife, Tren looked solemn. I'm very curious about the strength of the best swordsman in the Shang dynasty. Hawkeye said bluntly, and then drew his sword again. For a pure swordsman like him, the feeling of being evenly matched is the most satisfying. No one can hurt Captain Tren in front of me. Li Jing just wanted to draw the sword out of its sheath, but with the help of the 100% bare-handed sword, he had already blocked Hawkeye's attack with his right hand. Damn it, you must be the first to attack next time. Li Jing complained. A devil fruit user. Seeing that no matter how tricky his sword skills were, they would be blocked by Li Jing, Hawkeye suddenly thought of another possibility. So the armed color entangled, and at a faster speed, he slashed with the sword. My hand turned black, are you sick? Li Jing was confused, but he still took it easily, but it was a little heavier than before. Not a devil fruit user. After confirming, Hawkeye kicked back and directly threw a green slash. This time, you should draw your sword. Looking at the slashing attack, there was a trace of expectation in the eyes of the eagle. Bang! The powerful air currents scattered in all directions. There is no doubt that under the concept that all living beings are equal, it is still those two fingers that steadily receive it. No, why can you take all the slashes? Hawkeye was confused, completely confused, and the black knife Yi was inserted heavily into the side of his body. Actually, as long as I think about it, any attack is useless in my eyes. Li Jing scratched the back of his head as he looked at Hawkeye, who looked wrong. A white blade. Ha ha. Hawkeye laughed at himself. Unexpectedly, all his attacks were just ordinary white blades in this person's eyes. No wonder he refused to use the sword. It turned out that I didn't let him have all the fun. That's right, I couldn't even break through his defense. Chantangwan Li Jing, I will remember you. Hawkeye carried He Daoye back. Next time we meet, I will let you use the sword. After finishing speaking, he turned and left. Captain Tren, what does this guy mean? Li Jing was a little confused for a moment. Watching Hawkeye leave, Tren touched his chin, probably the defense was broken. Breaking defense. I didn't attack him. Mind breaking defense. Stop it, hurry up and grab the bag of supplies he left behind. Let's leave here first. I don't want to have multiple Hawkeyes behind me every day. Tren pointed to the bag of supplies left by Hawkeye, and then two people step on Hawkeye's boat and drift overseas. As for why, it's Hawkeye's ship, isn't this a trophy? Chapter 3 The Delusion of Betting on Dogs. Advertise here. In the East China Sea, in the island chain of the Kingdom of Goa, on the vast sea, a small boat like a coffin is drifting with the current. Captain, not only does this boat have no oars, it doesn't even have a toilet. Li Jing complained. Well, don't worry about it so much above the sea, Li Jing. On the small boat, Tren and Li Jing were squatting on one side, staring at each other with big eyes. I don't know how the swordsman called Eagle Eye usually solves the problem. Li Jing looked helpless, then took off the sword from his waist, inserted it into the sea water, and started rowing hard. But fortunately, he was very powerful and could still barely control the direction. He just needed to shoot left and right. Maybe it's pretty much what we thought. Hearing Li Jing's words, Tren nodded and said, there is no other way for a small boat without anything, so there is only one way. Extra food for the fish. Quote. Hearing Tren's words, Li Jing was startled. He thought of Hawkeye's aloof persona on the boat. Hey, he couldn't help but shudder. What a contrast. If there is no turbulent undercurrent, there is no need to control it, let it drift freely. Tren said with a sigh, lying lazily in the shadow cast by the sail. Okay, Captain. Li Jing responded, then put the sword into its sheath, put it in the sun to dry, and then sat down next to Tren. Looking at the cloudless blue sky, Tren thought, and the picture of the system immediately appeared in front of his eyes. The screen is very simple. As mentioned at the beginning, there is only a summon button and a warehouse which can only hold supplies provided by the system. There is no mall and no tasks. However, because I used a summon, there is a gift lying in the warehouse. Is it a sword? Tren opened the warehouse with anticipation, staring at the seemingly ordinary sword. Suddenly, his expression flashed like lightning, as if he had discovered some rare treasure. Could it be that this is a peerless weapon with extraordinary power? Well, that must be the case. After all, without the existence of a mall, the rewards for summoning must be extremely generous. Thinking of this, Tren licked his lips, took out the sword, and immediately the item information was displayed. Gambler's Delusion. When you draw your sword, there is a 90% chance of getting an extremely hard and mediocre sword, and a 10% chance of getting a completely Bankai-like Zanpakuto, so boy, take a gamble. Passive. Gambling Dog's Momentum. When you draw your sword, everything is unknown, so your momentum will be extremely terrifying. When you don't know the cards, Gambling Dog will always be arrogant. Warm reminder. Betting on dogs does not deserve sympathy. Close black lens bracket. No, can this be considered a reward? Tren looked helplessly at the pitch black sword in his hand. 10% probability. Suddenly Tren grabbed the hilt of the sword with one hand and the scabbard with the other. Ultimate meaning true quickly draw the sword. Ola ola. This move directly frightened Li Jing who was standing beside him. When he turned around, he saw Tren carrying him on his back, his hands going crazy. No, Captain, I'm still on the boat. I'm already old, don't do this. What did you say? Li Jing. Tren turned around, his hands still in the same posture. No. It's nothing, I'm just impure. Li Jing felt like something was stuck in his throat and finally chose to remain silent. At the same time, Tren also threw the sword aside. No, there is something wrong with this probability. If I pull it out, it is not 800 but 1000, right? There is no movement at all, can it be a poor quality product? System product after sales explanation. This sword has a judgment mechanism, and you are not currently in a gambling scene. Close black lens bracket. Looking at the system's explanation text, Tren's curse words got stuck in his throat and he was in a dilemma. Then can you tell me what the percentage number next to the summon button is? Because there is only one function, the word summon is particularly obvious, summon 25%. System after sales explanation. This is the progress bar for host's next summons. When the progress bar reaches 100%, the next summons can be carried out. Obtaining the progress bar requires the mental and emotional fluctuations of the plot characters in one piece. The amount provided depends on the situation. Individuals can provide up to 25% at a time. Looking at another small paragraph of text, Tren also understood that the 25% should be provided by Hawkeye now. Unexpectedly, Hawkeye broke through the defense. Li Jing, good job. Thinking of this, Tren patted Li Jing's shoulder with a look of relief. Although there is a difference between a strong person like Uchiha Madara than what he thought at the beginning, a conceptual level partner is enough to prove that his mental state is very advanced. System. If you don't get ahead, can you rely on trees on a rainy day? In this way, Tren and Li Jing drifted with the tide on the boat for a day and a night. Although they were guided by Eagle Eye's chart, they were like headless flies, unable to understand this intricate route. Fortunately, they have always been within the waters of the Kingdom of Goa. Coupled with the fact that the East China Sea has always been calm, and because Garp often returns home, this sea area is simply frighteningly safe. Finally, at noon the next day, Tren met a merchant ship. So, infected by the friendly smiles of the two people, the owner of the ship agreed without hesitation to help them tow to a nearby island. Thank you. Be careful next time. It's okay. The boat owner looked at the two monsters below, wiping the big beads of sweat on his forehead, and warned without looking back. Next time if you encounter a small boat, you must stay away from me, you know. After saying that, the owner of the boat looked full of regret. There were two cargo ships. The other one had been cut into two pieces by the middle-aged man. Do you know how much you have to pay this time? Looking at the merchant ships drifting away, Tren couldn't help but sigh. There are still many good people in the pirate world. Li Jing also smiled while fixing the boat at the port. Yes, they also provide us with delicious food and drinks. Li Jing asked curiously. But, Captain Tren, why do we come to this windmill village? Why? The corner of Tren's mouth raised slightly, then he pressed down the hat that came from the merchant ship and said mysteriously. Of course it's to confirm something. Matter. That's right. After Tren said, he walked inside. Although his understanding of One Piece is limited to casual viewing of short videos, he still knows the place where the protagonist Luffy first came out, Windmill Village. Luffy went to sea at the age of 17. At this moment, he desperately wanted to know where he was in the timeline. Just as Tren and Li Jing were walking towards Windmill Village, on the hillside of the harbor, 15-year-old Luffy looked at the coffin-like ship and couldn't help but exclaimed, "It's so handsome. If I go to sea, I will also get a boat like this." Thinking of this, Luffy showed his iconic smile. No, I have to go to the tavern and tell Shanks. Ask him if this kind of ship can be used. Chapter 4 Check in Scene Windmill Village. Advertise here. Tren led Li Jing and walked slowly towards the island. They were getting farther and farther away, and the harbor behind them became smaller and smaller, but it was still clearly visible. Looking up at the sky is clear and cloudless, like a blue gem embedded in it. Occasionally, there will be a few soft and white clouds floating leisurely, as light and cute as cotton candy. Not long after, a peaceful rural picture unfolded before our eyes. There are two tall windmills standing on both sides of the narrow and winding country road. Their white blades rotate slowly in the breeze, contrasting with the clear blue sky, forming a beautiful picture. Below the windmill is a vast expanse of green grassland, carefully guarded by wooden fences. On the grass, several fat and strong cows were leisurely munching on the fresh and juicy grass. It was such a pleasant scene. Looking far into the distance, you can vaguely see several simple and elegant farmhouses located in the distance, surrounded by lush trees. All these together create a tranquil, far-reaching, picturesque atmosphere, which makes people feel relaxed and happy, as if they are in a paradise. What a peaceful village. Tren looked at the scene in front of him and couldn't help but exclaimed in admiration. There is no hustle and bustle of war here, no raging pirates, only peace and tranquility. It has to be said that under the threat of marine hero Garp frequently asking for leave and red hair, Windmill Village has become a rare safe place in this sea area. It is indeed very peaceful and peaceful. Li Jing gently stroked the small bunch of delicate beard on his chin and nodded frequently in agreement. At this moment, several low cow calls came. It turned out that a few cows had discovered strangers like them, but they just barked a few times and then lowered their heads to eat grass leisurely. There should be villages and towns ahead, let's go. Tren glanced at Li Jing beside him, and then stepped forward. At this moment, he could no longer suppress his inner excitement and was eager to go to the tavern to spend a lot of money. As for why he had money, it was naturally the kind and generous merchant ship owner who generously donated his money. Just got a taste of the specialties here. Li Jing responded simply, and then followed Tren towards the villages and towns ahead. Windmill Village. As soon as they entered the village, the two saw many villagers coming and going, busy with their own affairs. There are various small shops on both sides of the street, displaying a dazzling array of products. Of course, the villagers of Windmill Village also noticed that the two outsiders, Tren was wearing a cowboy hat, a cardigan shirt, black trousers, and the dog bedding delusion on his waist. However, to the outside world, Tren would call him the famous sword. The gambling delusion. At this time, he was looking around. Li Jing is quite stable, but his unique Chinese and Shang dynasty style in the pirate world makes him even more eye-catching. No way, although there are many strange costumes in the world of One Piece, these villagers have never seen them before. Coupled with Garp and the red hair, there is no chance for foreign pirates to come here. This should be it. Tren excitedly pointed to a shop called Sea Breeze Bar, and said, let's go have a drink. After saying that, he couldn't wait to push the gate of opening and walk in. It's not bad to have a drink. Li Jing followed and entered the bar, which was filled with the strong aroma of wine. As the two opened the door and entered the bar, they immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the bar. There is no ship in the harbor. It seems that it must be parked elsewhere. Tren also swept everyone away and focused his attention on a man in front of the bar. He has red hair, 3 scars on his left eye, and his left hand is empty. You can tell he has gambled away his girlfriend. The captain of the red-haired pirates should be one of the 4 emperors of the New World at this time, the red-haired Shanks. At this time, the red-haired man was also staring at Tren and the two, but he didn't pay much attention to it. Instead, he continued to turn around and joke with the green-haired woman in the bar, and the pub became lively again. Let's find a place to sit. Tren's lips raised slightly with a smile, and he led Li Jing to find an empty seat and sit down. When the red-haired Maginot saw the arrival of guests, she fluttered like a gorgeous butterfly and came to Tren. Her long green hair hanging down like a waterfall on her shoulders was wrapped because she was wearing a scarf on her head. She was wearing a blue and white striped shirt and a red skirt, like a beautiful landscape. Hello, do you need anything? Guest. The corner of Maginot's mouth raised, showing a charming smile, her eyes were as bright as stars, staring at the black-haired boy. This is my first time coming to this village. Can you recommend some local wines and snacks to me? Okay, maybe because she has been working in a tavern and dealing with people, Maginot is very good at chatting with strangers. After recommending some dishes, she naturally started chatting with Tren. Is that so? Aren't you businessmen who come to Windmill Village to purchase goods? Looking at the beauty with a bright smile in front of him, Tren was in a happy mood and chatted with her with great interest. No, we are brave adventurers. Adventurer. I haven't heard this title for a long time. Maginot couldn't help but cover her red lips with her hand, showing a surprised look. Haha, there are indeed few. After all, there are more pirates now. After chatting for a while, the food and wine were served. Tren picked up the wine glass and drank it in one gulp, sighing with satisfaction. Li Jing slowly savored the taste of the wine and said with a smile, it really has a unique flavor. At this time, the atmosphere in the bar gradually became lively, with people laughing and enjoying this relaxed and happy moment. Adventurer. The red-haired man held the wine glass, raised his head and drank it all in one gulp, then turned his attention to the sabers on the waists of Tren and Li Jing. At the same time, Ben Beckman, who was drinking at another table, noticed the look in his captain's eyes, picked up his glass and walked towards them. Is it a pirate hunter? The red-haired man raised the corner of his mouth slightly when he heard this. Maybe. But they call themselves adventurers. Adventurer. Beckman frowned slightly. There are still people who are adventurers these days. I think this is just an excuse they use to hide their identity. Okay. Okay. The redhead patted Beckman on the shoulder, then grabbed his own wine glass and knocked it lightly. Don't worry about it, let's drink. Although the boy with short black hair stared at him like a hawk as soon as he entered the door, the red-haired boy didn't care at all. He was one of the 4 emperors, so it was normal for someone to be curious about him, not to mention, he didn't feel that these 2 guys could pose a threat to him at all. If they are real pirate hunters, I just hope they don't seek death. After all, Windmill Village is one of the few places where he can feel at ease. Chapter 5 The Man Who Has Played at the Top, Tren. Advertise here. The tavern was full of people and bustling, and everyone was immersed in their own small circles. The members of the red-haired pirate group were particularly active. They put their hands on their shoulders and danced happily, as if they were integrated with the people, enjoying the joyful atmosphere together. Miss Maginot, I really didn't expect your cooking skills to be so superb. Is this the legendary kind-hearted and ingenious person? This tastes amazing. Tren was full of praise as he ate his food. Ah, you're flattered, it's just average. Maginot waved her hands shyly, but the corners of her mouth that were always raised betrayed her joy. Captain, he is really good at talking things. The fat Lucky Lou said while looking at this scene with a big chicken drumstick in his mouth. Haha, he's a young and handsome guy. Beckman took a puff of cigarette and added unhurriedly. Hey, do you think I'm old? The red-haired man turned his head and stared at the 2 of them with burning eyes. Makino has long said that this makes me more masculine. The red-haired man said while touching his stubble-covered chin. Captain, you really need to learn how to get along with women. Just chatting is not enough. How many times have we been here, and you haven't caught her yet? The only one who has a wife and children, but Jesus be you, who abandoned his wife and son, shook the wine glass in his hand and joked. Don't talk nonsense. I'm doing this all for Luffy, okay? The red-haired retorted. Indeed, Luffy has been to Windmill Village many times since he was young and grew up, but strengthening Luffy's belief is the purpose. After all, children's ideas are easy to change. Of course, he himself is still a little bit young. Thought. Captain, are you still going to sit with us? Beckman pointed lightly with the hand holding the cigarette. Look, people are starting to take action. Looking at the other side, Tren was in front of the bar, relying on his rich New Age vocabulary to tightly trap Maginot in front of him. When Maginot waved her hands shyly, he took the opportunity to grab her shaking little hand and said. How could it be so ordinary? Even though she has been working all day long, Miss Maginot's hands are as soft, white and tender as a little girl's, like mud and fat white jade. Does Miss Maginot have a unique way of taking care of herself? Really? Maginot wanted to withdraw her hand, but after hearing what Tren said, she immediately forgot about it. She was deeply attracted by this brand new topic and allowed Tren to caress her little hand. No, you are an adventurer, so there must be a lot of people watching. You are trying to make me happy. I am indeed an adventurer. I have traveled around the world countless times and met many different kinds of people. But you are the unique pearl. With your astonishing appearance, gentle jade-like temperament, and understanding of others, I feel that the world-famous most beautiful woman, Empress Boya Hancock, is not 1/10,000th as good as you. PFF'd. After hearing Tren's shameless compliment, Shanks spit out the wine from his mouth. He knew that the Empress was truly top-notch in beauty. Boy, you are exaggerating. Have you met Boya Hancock? Shanks looked at the young man in front of him with suspicion and said. When Tren saw the red-haired man finally talking to him, he couldn't help but feel happy, but he didn't show it on his face. Instead, he smiled slightly, and then his expression changed, his face remained unchanged, and his heart beat steadily, and he replied, of course. I have seen it, so I feel that Miss Maginot's beauty is no less beautiful than hers. Hey, that's the Empress. Who doesn't know her beauty in the entire sea? Maginot, this brat is just trying to make you happy. Shanks retorted immediately after hearing this. However, before he finished speaking, he met Maginot's eyes full of evil meaning. I saw Maginot staring at the red-haired girl and asking coquettishly, so, in Shanks' heart, I am not as good as the so-called Empress. No, it's not. Upon seeing this, Shanks quickly wanted to explain something. But Maginot didn't give the red-haired woman a chance to explain. She shook her head gently and laughed self-deprecatingly. That's right. After all, I am the Empress, and she has unparalleled charm and power. And I'm just a small tavern owner. At this point, there was a trace of disappointment in Maginot's eyes. Summon 30%, as the red-haired soul's emotions fluctuate, the value increases accordingly. Seeing this, he was overjoyed. This was what he wanted, so he continued. Miss Maginot, why bother secretly? Each flower has its own fragrance. Hey, kid, please stop talking nonsense to me. Shanks couldn't help shouting to Tren. He had a feeling that if he continued to let this kid talk, his efforts in the past few years might be in vain. Looking at the red hair, Tren waved his hands helplessly. Obviously it was you who compared Miss Maginot to the Empress, but now it's my fault. Shanks. Maginot looked even worse at the redhead. What is this? In my heart, Shanks, Maginot, you are the most beautiful. Shanks blurted out. Oh, Captain. Everyone in the red-haired pirate group suddenly cheered, and Maginot also blushed. Seeing this, Tren stood up slightly and walked to the red hair. Then let me ask you, if you only have 9 Baileys on you at this time, how much are you willing to spend on Miss Maginot? All of them. Shanks didn't hesitate. What if it's 1 million? Tren continued to ask. Whether it's $9, 1 million, or 10 million, I'm willing to do it. Shanks responded domineeringly, and looked at Maginot, who also smiled gently. Seeing Maginot's smile towards him, the red-haired man felt stable, so he changed the subject and stared at Tren. He couldn't let this guy lead him by the nose, so he said, what if it's you? What if there is 1 million, how much are you willing to spend on Maginot? Me. Tren smiled slightly, looked at Maginot with affectionate eyes, and said in a low voice, 9 Bailey. Aha. Upon hearing this answer, Shanks couldn't help but smile. Did you hear that, Maginot? This kid is a selfish adventurer. He was just trying to coax you. Mr. Tron. Hearing this answer, Maginot couldn't help but feel a strange smell in her heart. Captain Tren is still too young. Li Jing, a middle-aged man who had been watching the theater, sighed. I told the commander a lot about his youth when we were on the ship. Tren is a promising young man from the new era. It can be said that he is a man who has played at the top of the game. This is just a low-end game. Looking at the guys in the tavern who were laughing at him, Tren seemed not to have heard anything. He walked to Maginot step by step with firm steps and took her hand without hesitation. Tren, you. Maginot's delicate body trembled, as if struck by lightning, and she stood stunned for a moment. However, Tren did not hesitate at all. He slowly lowered his head and kissed the back of her hand, as if he was protecting the most precious treasure in the world. Finally, he raised his head, stared at Maginot with affectionate eyes, and said softly, $9. Because 9 Baileys means that my love for you will never change. Even if I'm penniless, you'll still have $9. I may not have 1 million, but I won't be penniless. Just like I love you, no strings attached, Miss Maginot. Quote. As soon as these words came out, Maginot couldn't help but nodded, and silently responded in her heart, I do. Li Jing stroked his beard gently, with a proud look on his face. Captain Tren really got my true biography. The other members of the red-haired pirate group had a look of astonishment on their faces. Beckman even helplessly patted Shanks on the shoulder and sighed. Captain, you are no match for me. The red-haired man opened his mouth wide and hesitated, as if he was choked and couldn't speak. He kept thinking in his mind, but he couldn't think of anything to refute. No, how can someone who has played at the top level still be able to play at a low level? Is there no one to take care of it? Open black lens bracket summon 40% close black lens bracket chapter 6 Luffy. Advertise here. Seeing that the system panel had increased by another 10%, Tren nodded with satisfaction. The purpose of communicating with Maginot was to understand the red-haired soul's emotions. In particular, Tren discovered that once there are many important characters in the scene, the group's most important emotion will be captured. In other words, if Beckman is the only one in the red-haired pirate group, the system will determine that Beckman is a spiritual emotion acquirer, and the same will be true for everyone else. But if the red-haired Shanks is present, he, as the captain, will be the target of the judgment. It doesn't matter that this system has few functions, but its judgment is so particular. Tren complained helplessly. At the same time, Maginot also reacted and quickly retracted his hand. Although Tren behaved very well, after all, the two of them had only known each other for less than 2 hours, while Shanks had known each other for several years. I still need to prepare something. Haha. Maginot apologized with a smile, then turned back to the bar and poured glasses of wine. After all, there were still many guests in the pub. Looking at Maginot's expression, Tren didn't care. Anyway, his goal was achieved. Besides, he doesn't believe that a few words can really make a girl fall in love with him, but he may fall in love with him for a second or two, but only for a second or two. It's okay, I was rude. Tren smiled politely. Yes. Seeing that Tren was such a gentleman, Maginot filled him with a glass of rum. This is a treat from you, and it doesn't count. Thank you, Miss Maginot. Tren raised his glass and touched Maginot lightly. Just when everyone returned to the proper atmosphere, a carefree voice came from outside the tavern. Hey, Shanks. At this moment, a 15-year-old boy rushed into the pub. The boy was wearing a red vest and blue jeans, with a trademark straw hat hanging behind his neck, and an obvious scar under his eye. That's right, this is the top pirate backstage king of the Ming Dynasty, my father Marine, my father's Revolutionary Army, Monkey D. Luffy, who has always made Kizaru unable to kick his feet. Has Luffy not gone to sea yet? Looking at Luffy, Tren's eyes darkened slightly, and then he handed over a few Baileys. Miss Maginot, I'll treat this brother with a loud voice to a drink. No, Mr. Tron. Maginot shook his head. Luffy is only 15 years old, he can't drink. 15 years old. Does that mean he still has 2 years to go to sea? Tren, who caught the words, already knew the timeline of where he was. So he smiled helplessly and said, sorry, let's change it to juice. Hey, Luffy, didn't you say you were going to the back mountain for training? Rockyru's fat body squeezed out from behind and hugged Luffy's shoulders. Are you trying to be lazy? Hee hee. Let me go, Lucky. Luffy broke free. I'm here to find Shanks. Of course we know you are here to see the captain. We all heard your yelling just now. The other crew members laughed. Luffy, what's the matter? Shanks asked as he looked at Luffy without paying attention as his crewmates joked. Of course. Luffy looked excited, and then told Shanks about the ship he saw in the harbor. Hey, Shanks, can that little coffin-like boat really go out to sea? After listening to Luffy's description, Shanks was stunned because the ship Luffy mentioned was his friend and rival. Hawkeye, Mihawk's ship. Has Mihawk come to Windmill Island? Shanks couldn't help but ponder, although he had received Mihawk's dual invitation letter a few days ago. After all, this guy often comes to sparring with me, but didn't he say that the location would be on an uninhabited island? Now. Just when the redhead was confused, Maginot poured a glass of juice and handed it over. Luffy, drink it. Thank you, Sister Maginot. Luffy nodded to Maginot. Don't thank me, it was the brother who bought you a drink. The reason why he calls Tren his brother in front of Luffy is because in Maginot's eyes, Tren doesn't look much older than Luffy. Hearing Maginot's words, Luffy looked where he was pointing, and saw Tren, who had short black hair, shaking his hand. Arigato. Luffy laughed at Trent, but when he saw Trent's cowboy hat on the table, his eyes narrowed. Because when he was on the hillside at that time, he only saw the heads of Tren and Li Jing, but did not see anything else clearly. Now that he thinks about it, coupled with the fact that Li Jing was wearing a very recognizable outfit next to Tren, he immediately remembered it. Oh, you are the two coffin men. Tren. Li Jing. Luffy, this kid, has an innate ability to recognize people from objects. Marco is called Pineapple Head, and he and Li Jing are called Coffin People. Shanks, the coffin ship I'm talking about belongs to both of them. Luffy looked back at Shanks and said. After hearing Luffy's words, Shanks' expression froze and he stared at the smiling Tren. Suddenly, his heart was filled with endless questions, but he also thought of the very nervous Luffy, so he waved to Jesus Bu and asked him to go to the harbor to confirm, while he stayed in the tavern. On the other side, Luffy recognized Tren, walked straight towards the two of them, and asked curiously, can you really sail on that coffin ship? Haha, of course. Tren couldn't help but laugh. This kind of cross-dimensional communication made him suddenly interested. It's just a troublesome thing without an oar. Li Jing sighed heavily. That's why we just go with the flow. Li Jing. Tren said while drinking. So, you are also pirates. Luffy's eyes immediately sparkled with excitement. Pirates. Tren's hand holding the wine glass paused, and then he put the wine glass back on the table and said firmly. We are not pirates. We are adventurers. What is an adventurer? Luffy looked confused. Adventurers are those who explore everywhere and are filled with a strong interest in all unknown things. Tren explained with a smile. Isn't this just a pirate? The pirate adventure in Luffy's mind is actually an adventure with his friends. If it weren't for the nature of the sentence, I want to be a man of one piece. Luffy and his party are simply an adventure team. The difference between a pirate and an adventurer actually just depends on your future actions at sea. Tren did not explain too much to Luffy. As that's so, Luffy frowned. This kind of question that requires brain power is just making things difficult for me, Wong Luffy. You will naturally understand in the future. Tren smiled slightly, stood up slowly, put the money on the bar, and prepared to leave with Li Jing. Just when the two of them were about to leave, Jesus Bu, who was originally sent out by Shanks to confirm the matter, came back. Jesus Bu, Tren and Li Jing passed by each other at the entrance of the tavern. This guy. Just a glance made Jesus Bu's heart become confused, because the small boat in the harbor turned out to be really Hawkeye, Joe Raquel Mihawk. Chapter 7 The Scum Who Abandoned His Wife and Children. Advertise here. This guy. Looking at the two people who were smiling and leaving, Jesus frowned and then walked towards the red-haired man. How? Shanks looked at Jesus Cloth, holding the wine glass in his hand. Captain. Jesus Bu looked solemn and nodded silently. That boat must belong to Eagle Eye. In fact, when Shanks saw Jesus Bu's solemn expression, he was already convinced. Is this so? What kind of adventurers are they? They are just two thieves. Jesus said through gritted teeth. Because of the relationship between Hawkeye and Shanks, the other members of the red-haired pirate group have more or less friendships with Hawkeye. Seeing Jesus gritting his teeth, Shanks drank all the wine in his hand and slammed the glass on the bar. Bang! With this sound, the atmosphere where the red-haired pirates were singing and dancing suddenly became quiet. They all looked at their captain. Beckman also lit up a cigarette again and held it in his mouth. Shanks. Luffy looked at the suddenly quiet crowd and Luffy, who was drinking juice, with a confused look on his face. Ha. Shanks smiled slightly, then stood up slowly, walked to Luffy, put the straw hat hanging on the back of his neck on his head, and pressed it with his right hand. Luffy, we have to leave. Are you leaving again? Shanks. Luffy curled his lips. That's right. Next time, we will meet on the sea. Shanks continued to smile. Luffy will go to sea in 2 years, and he does not need to continue to come to Windmill Village. I will definitely become One Piece by then. Luffy raised his left hand and made a fist. Haha. Then let's look forward to meeting One Piece. Shanks waved his hand. Let's go. Get ready to go, everyone. Yes, Captain. As Shanks walked out of the tavern, the red-haired pirates followed closely behind. Dot 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 dot. Speeding village. On the trail, Tren and Li Jing are strolling here. Captain, where should we go next? Li Jing looked at Tren and asked. Going somewhere. Tren frowned. In fact, judging from the geographical location, they set sail from the speeding car village. You can pass through many places, the nearest is Kodo Island, or the town of Shirzi where Marine Captain Monka is located. How about going to Shields Town and then taking a short boat ride to Rog Town? Taren couldn't help but think of it. Anyway, he and Li Jing are white and not pirates. They just don't have identification, but does it matter? Not important. Thinking of this, Taren said to Li Jing, we are adventurers, we must go to meaningful places. For example, the execution place of One Piece, Rog Town is very good. Then let's buy a pair of oars first. I don't want to continue rowing with a sword. Li Jing touched the sword on his waist distress-edly. That's right, hee. Tren chuckled, and the two of them just chatted without saying a word. Suddenly Li Jing's steps slowed down and he whispered, Captain Tren, there are fewer and fewer villagers near us. They seem to be deliberately avoiding us. After hearing Li Jing's words, Tren looked around, and it was indeed as Li Jing said. Obviously they haven't left the village yet, but there is no one around. It seems that someone is looking for us. As soon as Tren finished speaking, a figure walked out of the corner ahead. With slightly yellowish hair and slight curls, who else could it be if he wasn't Jesus? Sorry, you two, you can't leave. Jesus said, leaning against a beam, holding a gun in his hand. Unlike 12 years later, it was still a short gun. It's really unlucky to be blocked by a scum who abandoned his wife and children. Tren looked at Jesus and spat. Hearing Tren's words, Jesus frowned slightly. What are you talking about, a thief? Haha, am I wrong? My wife was tortured by illness for a whole year and passed away, while someone was drinking and eating meat in the next village. Taren didn't think he was wrong. In his past life memory, the introduction about the Jesus Cloth life card said that he came to Windmill Village with Shanks 13 years ago. Usopp was 19 years old 2 years later, which means that Usopp was 17 when he followed Luffy to the sea. In other words, Usopp was only 2 years old when Jesus left their mother and son. If we extrapolate 15 years from this, it means that Jesus left the village for 15 years. Therefore, he joined the red-haired pirates 15 years ago, and then followed the red-haired pirates to Windmill Village 2 years later. Usopp was just 4 years old at this time. Tron, who had seen the sea map on the Hawkeye ship, knew very well that Windmill Village was not far from Zybro Village, but this man did not say at all that he wanted to go back to see his children or wife. Instead, he chose to follow the red hair and eat wine and meat in Maginot's tavern. That year, Usopp's mother was critically ill, but his father was living happily in the next village. If you are worried that Marine will find out where your family is and you won't go back, then you are not a human being if you don't provide any living expenses. Anyway, Tren didn't believe that the Jesuits would not have the means to provide living expenses for his wife and children without him showing up. To put it bluntly, he was a guy who abandoned his wife and son for freedom. As for what he said to Luffy about his son later, it was probably just out of guilt. Some people may say that the world of pirates cannot be viewed with modern concepts, but no matter what, Tren just looks down on such scum who abandon their wives and children. I am doing this for the safety of their mother and son. Facing Tren's words, although he didn't know why the other party knew about his family affairs, he still used the words he often comforted himself, Kaido. Safety. Your wife has no money for medical treatment and has been tortured for a year, while your son has suffered the pain of survival at a young age. So this is safety. Tren mocked. Oh, you are not a man with an 8-foot-long body. Li Jing also looked down upon Jesus bu very much. No, how could you know so much about me? Jesus suddenly reacted and stared at Taren like a hawk. Looking at Jesus bu's sharp eyes, Tren naturally would not tell him that he was a time traveler, so he said with a smile. Because I have been to Zailuobu village and met your son who lives like a beggar for survival. However, your wife doesn't blame you and makes your son proud of you. Tisk tisk tisk. Quote. Shut up, you thief, what qualifications do you have to criticize me? I am a man inspired by the pirate flag. Listening to Tren's words, Jesus bu clenched his hands involuntarily. The next moment, he quickly raised his gun, loaded it, and aimed at Tren. Want to take action. At the same time, Li Jing was also ready to kill him instantly. Chapter 8 The Tough Red-Haired Pirates. Advertise here. For a moment, the scene became tense. Jesus bu's index finger was still on the trigger of the gun, but he couldn't press it down, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Because he could feel that the middle-aged man in strange clothes next to Tren could kill him the moment he pulled the trigger. Although Li Jing didn't even put his hand on the hilt of the sword. But he seemed to have been targeted by Shinigami. Hey, Jesus bu. Just as Li Jing and Jesus bu were arguing, a red-haired voice came from behind Tren. Huh, hearing the voice of his captain, Jesus breathed a sigh of relief. On the other side, Taren also turned around, and as expected, wearing a white shirt, cropped trousers, a black cloak, and Griffin's red-haired shanks tied around his waist, he walked slowly. Behind him were Beckman and Lakiru, one on the left and one on the right. Of course, it was not just the red-haired person, other ship personnel also rushed out from all directions, surrounding Tren and Li Jing. Looking at this battle, Tren didn't know if it was because of the lightning strike. At this time, not only was his body transformed, but his heart also became extremely calm, free and easy. Hey, Shanks, you don't have to go through such a big fight if you want to get back your face in the tavern. Tren stared at Shanks and chuckled. Li Jing stood quietly next to Tren. With him, Li Jing, no one could hurt Captain Tren. Haha, how could that happen? Shanks scratched the back of his head and smiled. But when he saw that there was no look of fear on Tren's face, he took a high look at this young man in his heart. Then what do you mean? Looking at Tren, Shanks raised the corner of his mouth, took a deep breath and shouted, Jenny Tren, give me a face and hand over your boat to me. Seeing the red-haired man using his face fruit ability, Trenton suddenly farted. How is that possible? Haha. Looking at Shanks, Tren shook his index finger. Sorry. Shanks, I can't give you face, that ship is my trophy. Can't we negotiate? The owner of your ship is my good friend Mahawk. If you keep using it, I'm afraid you will be in big trouble. At this time, Tren's phrase, loot, meant in the red-hair's mind that it was stolen. But also, how could Hawkeye, whose swordsmanship was not inferior to his own, let his ship be robbed? Apart from stealing, the red-haired man couldn't think of any other possibility. Brother Tren, you probably don't know who Mahawk is yet, right? Beckman said. I know. Tren smiled slightly, isn't he the world's best swordsman? And you, that's why I said it's a trophy. Tren interrupted Beckman directly. But isn't it a bit too much for you to suddenly surround me like this? Or, I am indeed a pirate, and my true nature cannot change, no matter how friendly I pretend to be to the people. Shut up, you two thieves. Jesus B.U., who had already been holding back his anger, suddenly became more confident when he saw his captain was there. He raised his gun and aimed it directly at Tren, then pulled the trigger. Jesus cloth. The red hair shouted, but it was too late. Bang, bang. Suddenly, a deafening loud noise came overwhelmingly, drowning out the sound of Jesus Bu's gunshot. It turned out that at the moment Jesus Bu pulled the trigger, Li Jing drew his sword and split the bullet like a gust of wind, and then slashed at Jesus Bu with his sword. In an instant, everyone in the room was shocked into silence, while Jesus fell down in the broken house on the side, his eyes turned white, there was a shocking sword wound on his chest, and blood continued to drip from the corner of his mouth. Jesus Bu. The other members of the red-haired pirate group woke up from a dream and hurriedly stepped forward to check. Fortunately, Jesus Bu just fainted and Li Jing did not kill him. Hey, you two guys. However, more people glared at the two of them. Looking at everyone's expressions, Tren didn't care at all, but looked at Li Jing. I thought you would catch that bullet. A guy who can't even be considered a white knife attacker in my eyes is not worthy of being my enemy, Li. Li Jing said calmly, then turned to look at the red-haired man. Such a fast sword, and a sword skill I have never seen before. Faced with Li Jing's Chinese swordsmanship, Shanks couldn't help but be a little surprised, especially at that moment, he didn't see it clearly. Shanks, he did it first, can we go? Tren spread his hands helplessly. Of course, but you injured my crew member, and he is my brother. Shanks's pupils shrank suddenly, and an unparalleled conquerors burst out, surging like a furious wave. Seeing their captain taking action, Beckman and Lakiru instantly pulled out the guns on their waists and dodged in an attempt to attack Tren from both sides. In front of Li, no one can hurt Captain Tren. Li Jing's voice sounded like thunder. Bang! Li Jing raised his sword and cut Lajalu's spear into two pieces like he was chopping melons and vegetables. Immediately afterwards, he turned his sword and struck Rakiru's chin with the hilt of the sword at lightning speed. This blow was like a mountain pressing down on an egg. It was so powerful that Rakiru felt his eyes go dark. His eyes turned white, and he fell to his knees straight to the ground. As soon as Beckman saw Lackey fall to the ground, the cold sword blade pressed against his neck like a lion majesty, exuding bursts of chill. Be quiet. Li Jing's eyes were as sharp as a falcon, filled with endless killing intent, as if telling Beckman that as long as he made the slightest move, the sharp sword blade would immediately cut his throat. Beckman was shocked by the murderous intent and involuntarily lowered the gun he raised. When Shanks saw this, he was about to pull out Griffin, but a stronger aura came from him. I saw Tren put his hand on the gambling on his waist, and gently pulled it out. In an instant, the sky changed color, and lightning-like reddish currents suddenly emerged, filling the surroundings, and the surrounding sea suddenly surged. Trigger the aura of the gambling dog. As long as you don't pull out the sword, you will have the most powerful aura in this world. Close black lens bracket. Hey, Shanks, do you want to start a fight here? Tren's voice was like thunder, exploding in Shanks' ears. How is this domineering possible? Looking at the aura coming from Tren, the red-haired man couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He had only witnessed this kind of momentum from his own captain, Roger, and perhaps only from Rayleigh at his peak. Also, let me tell you, I snatched this ship from Hawkeye. So the phrase, trophy, is literal. Chapter 9. Everyone takes a step back. Advertise here. Looking at Tren, Shanks's face became serious, and he knew that the situation in front of him was beyond his expectation. The momentum shown by Tren at this moment and the unsheathed sword made him feel a little afraid. The two sides were in a stalemate, and the atmosphere was extremely tense. And when Tren saw that Shanks was frightened by his momentum, he was relieved. After all, if the fight really started, it was Li Jing who defeated the entire red-haired pirate group by himself, because he was 100% sure that he would not win the prize the first time he drew his sword. But fortunately, Shanks is obviously restrained by him now, so according to the common rules of dog betting, as long as he doesn't know the cards, he is the biggest. So Tren spoke slowly, even if there are only two of us, the rest of the crew except you may not survive. Shanks. Facing the threat of Tren, Shanks hesitated. Although Tren didn't really take action, this momentum could not be faked. In addition, the swordsman named Li Jing is a great swordsman with great strength, and even the sword skills he uses cannot be understood by himself. Then I thought about it, how could someone like Li Jing, a great swordsman, be weak? Tren, I don't want to be your enemy. After thinking for a moment, Shanks took a deep breath, trying to calm his inner turmoil, and released his hand from Griffin's sword hilt. I don't want to cause trouble, but you guys have gone too far. Tren's tone was firm, without any intention of backing down. How about we each take a step back? Shanks said calmly, otherwise if we fight, you may not be able to leave alive. Will each of you take a step back? That's right, everyone goes their separate ways. That's the end of the matter. Okay. Tren inserted the slightly drawn sword back, and his momentum completely dissipated. Li Jing, let's go. Tron looked at Li Jing who still had the sword on Beckman's neck and said. Yes, Captain Tren. Li Jing glanced at Beckman, then retracted his sword and jumped to Tren's side. At the same time, Beckman also breathed a sigh of relief and walked to the side of Lackey who was knocked unconscious. Jenny Tren. Looking at Tren who was about to leave, Shanks looked at the injured Jesus Bu and Lachalu, raised his eyes and said coldly. See you next time, I hope you are well. Really? Tren smiled nonchalantly, and then his expression sank. If we meet again, I still won't give you your face. After saying that, the corners of Tren's mouth rose again. However, Hawkeye's little boat will be lost when I have a better time to ship it. If you still want it then, go find it. Tren left and took Li Jing away towards the harbor. Only the red-haired pirates remained in place, and Shanks sat aside with a gloomy face. Shanks. Beckman walked up to Shanks with a cigarette in his mouth and said, two such powerful swordsmen never expected to hide in the East China Sea. It's really disgusting. Rakiru, who had woken up at the side, moved his fleshy jaw. That middle-aged man struck really hard. I don't know how long it has been since I was knocked unconscious by a blow. This time we were careless and failed to see clearly the strength of our opponent, which led to the current situation. Shanks took a deep breath and tried to calm down. Anyone can be careless, Shanks. Beckman still looked calm and said. What's more, there are two great swordsmen who are not weaker than Hawkeye, and the guy named Tren, the momentum just now was really terrifying. That's right. Even if Tren didn't take action, everyone in the red-haired pirate group subconsciously thought that his strength was equal to or stronger than that of Li Jing. A man who is too strong but has no news at all before. Shanks stood up and patted Beckman on the shoulder. It is enough to show that the situation on the sea will soon change. And there is no need for us to take risks just for the so-called face. Quote. But, okay, stop talking. Shanks interrupted Beckman, we still have our own goals and can't waste time here. Pack up and get ready to go. The members of the red-haired pirate group began to clean up the mess. As for the most seriously injured Jesus, he was also treated and carried by 3 people. At this moment, a figure carrying a sword came from not far away. Long time no see, Shanks. The person who came was none other than Mahawk, and his appearance surprised everyone. Mahawk, why are you here? Shanks was a little surprised. I wasn't far from here. Hawkeye looked at Shanks, and then at the situation of the rest of the red-haired pirate group. It seems that he has become enemies with you. You mean, Tren? Shanks was stunned when he heard this. If that middle-aged swordsman named Li Jing calls a young man Captain Tren, that's it. Hawkeye nodded slightly. Ha ha, Shanks chuckled, that guy is not simple. He single-handedly shocked my entire red-haired pirate group. Shanks looked at Hawkeye solemnly, then his expression changed and he smiled. Exception, I saw your boat. Mahawk. I lost. Hawkeye sighed, all my attacks were perfectly blocked by the swordsman named Li Jing. No way. Shanks looked at Hawkeye and didn't react for a moment. After all, making the world's greatest swordsman admit that he lost is not just a matter of strength. You mean, the swordsman named Li Jing took action, but the young man named Tren didn't? That's right. Hawkeye replied flatly. After being confirmed again by Hawkeye, both Shanks and Beckman felt scared in their hearts, especially Beckman who was threatened by Li Jing. They originally thought that it was Tren and Li Jing who fought together to repel Hawkeye and then seized his ship. But now, one look at it, Li Jing beat Hawkeye until he admitted that he lost. What if Tren came together? Recalling the terrifying momentum, Shanks swallowed his saliva. That guy does have the strength to deal with his own crew. However, I didn't let the swordsman have all the fun. He never made a move from beginning to end. Just used 2 fingers to prevent all attacks. After saying that, Hawkeye turned to stare at Shanks. So starting from today, I will stay with you for a while, and we will practice well together. After all, you are still an opponent. Huh. Hearing what Hawkeye said, Shanks, who likes to hold parties when he has nothing to do, can't stand it. What is this guy thinking about staying on his own ship? It's good to come here once in a while, do you still want to practice more often? So Shanks refused on the spot, but obviously, Shanks' refusal was useless, and Hawkeye finally boarded the ship. Chapter 10 Tren's Own Hidden Abilities. Advertise here. The sea, you are all water. At this moment, in the vast expanse of the East China Sea, a lonely boat was drifting with the current, as if it had lost its direction. After leaving the picturesque windmill village, Tren lay lazily on the coffin-like boat deck, his eyes fixed on the flickering system screen in front of him. It shows his current summoning progress. Summon 45%, Mahawk provides 25%, red-haired Shanks provides 15%, Jesus Cloth provides 5%. No, Tren muttered to himself, while clicking on the summoning interface to check the specific situation carefully. Originally, he was full of expectations, hoping to gain more spiritual emotions through the conversation with Jesus BU, but the fact made him frown. I had talked so much to Jesus BU while the red-haired man was away, just because I liked him to be a big guy, but in the end, the big guy only provided 5% of the spiritual emotion. This guy is really not a man. Tren sighed and shook his head, feeling a little disappointed in Jesus BU. He originally thought that Usopp and his son should have an important position in Jesus' heart, but now it seems that their value is not as high as he imagined. When will we be able to summon the next partner? Tren couldn't help shouting, becoming increasingly anxious. Immediately afterwards, Tren suddenly turned over and sat up, staring into the distance with bright eyes, secretly thinking about the next plan in his heart. Since he has a system, why should he look for so-called partners? After all, how can outsiders trust 100% loyal members? Moreover, he, Tren, was not in the mood to talk to other people. In particular, the current progress was so slow, which made him feel even more stressed. So far, everyone from Hawkeye to Red Hair has relied on Li Jing to successfully tide over the difficulties. As for his own strength, it is simply appalling, and his gamble ability is too extreme. Once the other party refuses to do this, you will be in trouble. Especially now, the two of them have never encountered anyone with devil fruit abilities. I shouldn't be so weak myself. In any case, the thunder during the time traveling transformed my body and mind. Tren took a deep breath and fell into deep thought. Captain Tren, you are the most powerful among us. Perhaps hearing Tren's muttering to himself, Li Jing, who was paddling, turned his head and smiled. Among us. That's right, Captain Tren, you are going to start a new adventure now, and everyone will be back soon. In Li Jing's mind, whose identity has been entered into his memory by the system, the partners who have not yet been summoned were all members of Tren in the past. They were just on their way here. However, Tren ignored the second half of the sentence and caught Li Jing's first sentence just now, am I really strong? Li Jing. Of course. Li Jing nodded seriously, Captain Tren, you just haven't remembered your abilities yet. When everyone comes back one after another, Captain Tren, your strength will return to its peak. After all, I'm not a weakling now. Tren lay back on the board. Ha ha. Li Jing smiled softly. Before his laughter fell, he suddenly drew out his sword like a gust of wind and slashed towards Tren. Whoosh. In an instant, a sharp sound broke through the air like thunder. Holy shit. Seeing this, Terran's body moved like a conditioned reflex, as if endless power exploded in an instant. He stood up like a dancing elf and made cool moves like street dancing. He raised his palms, like a light dancer, dodging the attack. Then he pushed slightly and jumped onto the sail frame like a flying swallow. Li Jing, what are you doing? Tren's voice echoed in the air, with a hint of surprise and anger. Captain Tren, your evasion ability has not been lost at all. Li Jing put his sword into its sheath and looked up at the special ship stuck on the wooden frame of the sail. Omega. Looking at Li Jing, Terran, who had reacted, looked at where he was at this time and couldn't help but be stunned. No, when did I come up? Captain Tren, you have the strength to rely on your body's instinct to avoid all attacks. Li Jing sat back on the board of the ship. Hearing Li Jing's words, Tren raised his eyebrows and said, so, don't I have the weakening board free ultimate intention kung fu? Thinking of this, Tren turned his eyes to his waist again. Then, he drew his sword and looked at the extremely hard and ordinary sword. System, your phrase, incomparably tough, should mean that it can fight against all weapons without being weak, right? Faced with Tren's problem, this time it was a product after sales problem, so a text appeared on the system interface. Everything provided by the system is based on the meaning explained in the text, so it is the literal meaning. Close black lens bracket. Holy shit, as long as I don't take the initiative to attack and rely on my gamble without winning the lottery, plus the weakening board that comes with my body, isn't it the top pretense holy body? Thinking of this, the depression in Terran's heart dissipated like smoke, and was replaced by excitement. Let's put it this way, cough. Tren, I'm still very strong. Ha ha. Just as Tren was secretly proud, a black shadow slowly emerged like a ghost under the boat where they were. Because Terran was squatting on the sail frame at this time, he was the first to notice this abnormal situation. This is. Looking at the growing black shadow, Tren's two eyebrows were almost squeezed together. Oh, I remembered that in the world of pirates, there are such things as sea beasts and Poseidon. Bang. Before Tren finished speaking, a very abstract sea beast with a huge body, a face like a bull, and a body like a lion jumped out of the bottom of the boat like a rocket, directly pushing Hawkeye's boat into the sky. Woo. The sea beast looked at the thing it held up in the sky and opened its huge mouth triumphantly, as if waiting for the food to fall into it automatically. Holy shit, the boat is gone. Tren didn't care about the big mouth below at all, but felt sorry for the boat. You evil beast, I will kill you. Li Jing was the most angry. He finally bought a paddle, but after only a few days of rowing, you told me that the boat was gone. After saying that, Li Jing suddenly pulled out the sword from his waist and stood it firmly in front of his chest. He exuded a majestic aura that seemed to be integrated with the sharp sword in his hand. The sea beast opened its eyes wide and stared at Li Jing in midair. Suddenly, it saw a cold light flash on Li Jing's chest, and then it felt as if its brain had shut down for an instant, completely losing its ability to think. At this moment, Li Jing swung his sword down without hesitation, his movements as natural and smooth as flowing clouds and flowing water. Wherever the sword light flickered, the sea beast that was originally bearing its fangs and claws was instantly split into two, and its huge body fell to the ground with a crash, splashing water all over the sky. This thrilling scene was jaw-dropping and caused a huge wave. As the sea beast died, its huge body floated on the sea surface, and scarlet blood poured out continuously, soon dyeing the surrounding seawater a shocking red. Chapter 11 Arita. Advertise here. The sea surface, which was originally as blue as a gem, was now dyed bright red, as if the entire ocean was flowing with blood. Tren and Li Jing stood quietly on the corpse of the huge sea beast floating on the sea, staring at the ship that had long been shattered into countless pieces. The sea breeze roared by, bringing a slight chill, but the chill in their hearts was far worse than the wind. Li Jing. Tren broke the silence first, his voice low and hoarse. Captain Tren. Li Jing responded, his eyes also full of confusion and confusion. What do we do now? How about we use this half of the body as a boat? Li Jing lowered his head and stared at the half of the body floating quietly on the sea at his feet, and suggested thoughtfully. It's just right. I just held on to the oar when the boat was broken. Looking at Li Jing, who was holding a paddle in front of him, giving a thumbs up with his other hand and a confident smile on his face, Tren covered his face helplessly and muttered. Regardless of how long it takes us to row it before it can move, the more critical question is. With such a huge corpse, it might not take long for it to attract the attention of other sea beasts. Quote. As this so, Li Jing's originally excited expression suddenly sank. But you did remind me. At this moment, Tren suddenly raised the corners of his mouth slightly and spoke confidently. We are not completely helpless now. Tren then changed the topic and continued to explain. Once another sea beast approaches, let's just teach it a lesson and force it to be obedient, and then ride on the beast to break through the waves. Oh, you are worthy of being the leader of Tren. After hearing these words, Li Jing's eyes suddenly lit up, and at the same time he was secretly annoyed. Why didn't he think of it? Just as Tren and Li Jing were waiting for a lucky sea beast to take the bait, a pirate ship with pink and white as the main color, a swan on the bow, and a heart symbol as its flag came slowly not far away. On the boat, Madara, a fat, ugly-looking woman with a full face and an iron rod in her hand, was looking at her crew members and said fiercely. Why don't you pull up the sail quickly? Didn't you see the sea animal flesh in front of you? Arita, holding a monocular, looked at the Red Sea and licked her lips. This looks like two sea beasts fighting, and the other one was defeated and killed. Unexpectedly, Arita, met me. It just happened that I haven't eaten sea beast meat for a while, ha ha ha. Captain, why don't we wait any longer? Maybe another sea beast is still around. A turbaned pirate said sarcastically. Hearing the crew member's words, Arita frowned, put down the monocular, raised the hammer and mace in her hand, and smacked it. Bang! The crew member was immediately knocked out several meters and stopped moving. Others swallowed their saliva watching this scene. I am the most beautiful woman on the sea. Arita swung the hammer and mace and carried it on her shoulder with one hand. There is even 3 million Baileys hanging in the balance, nicknamed Iron Hammer, Alita, the captain of the Alita pirates. So, at this point, Arita's eyes darkened. Bring the boat closer to me. Yes. Seeing Arita's ferocious appearance, everyone under her was unambiguous and began to perform their duties. At this time, Arita has not yet eaten the slippery fruit, and has not yet met Buggy, so she is still just a pirate roaming the East China Sea, with a bounty of only 3 million belly. On the other side, Tren, who was squatting on the corpse of the sea beast, slowly stood up while looking at the pirate ships that kept coming towards the two of them. Captain Tren, has a sea beast taken the bait? Seeing Tren's actions, Li Jing raised his eyes and asked. No. Tren looked at the love pirate flag and raised the corner of his mouth slightly. We didn't catch any sea monsters, but the pirate ship did catch one. Don't be stunned. Our boat has arrived. Tren glanced at Li Jing and said. Following Tren's gaze, Li Jing also saw the pirate ship heading towards them, and his face suddenly lit up with joy. I know Captain Tren must have a solution. This is just a coincidence. Tren waved his hand. Returning to the Arita pirates, they had already docked the ship 100 meters away from the sea beast's body. There are even crew members equipped to pull out the corpses of sea beasts with hooks. Captain, just come closer. Then get closer, Arita commanded, but as soon as she finished speaking, 2 figures of her crew members fell from the sky before their hooks could be thrown out. Bang! Tren and Li Jing fell heavily to the deck. Thank you, Li Jing. I didn't expect you to be able to lead me. It's okay, Captain Tren, this is what I should do. The corners of Li Jing's mouth rose slightly. It was obvious that he was very happy to be praised by Tren. Who are you? How dare you break into my ship? After a moment of silence, Arita shouted directly after reacting. Arita's crew members gathered around and got into fighting postures with weapons in hand. If you don't want to die, get out of here. The crew of the Arita pirates shouted loudly. When Arita saw this, she also smiled slightly, but when she saw Tren's young and handsome face, she hesitated. Especially when Tren was wearing a cardigan and shirt, showing off her figure, I couldn't help but feel. You too, you suddenly visited my pirate ship, do you want to join us? Arita stared at Tren and said, but the middle-aged Li Jing was completely ignored by her. Hearing Arita's words, Tren couldn't help but be startled, and then waved his hand. No, we are adventurers, not pirates. As for why we boarded your ship just to borrow a favorable wind, our ship was destroyed by sea monsters. Quote. Yes, I hope. Li Jing smiled and nodded. He was about to say something, but when he saw Arita's appearance, his words of praise stuck in his throat. As that's so. Looking at the two of them, Arita licked her lips and took the initiative to walk down the deck. Then you should know my name, right? Have no idea. Quote. Quote. Our captain is the Iron Hammer, Arita, who has a bounty of 3 million Baileys on his head. A crew member shouted his name at the top of his lungs. Hammer. Terran's body trembled, and then he glanced at Arita. Captain Tren, look, how apt this nickname is. Li Jing lowered his voice and laughed. What are you two secretly whispering about? I am truly the most beautiful woman on the sea. Arita shouted at the top of her voice, and then she stopped covering up. So, since you are on my ship, you are my people. After saying this, Arita pointed at Li Jing. You, old guy, you are responsible for handling the goods and doing miscellaneous tasks. As for you, after arranging Li Jing, Arita turned her eyes to Tren, with the corners of her mouth raised slightly. Just stay with me tonight. Chapter 12 Pirate Hunter Tren. Advertise here. Ha ha ha. Arita laughed, she was still very confident in her charm and beauty. Don't worry, I will dress up tonight and give you a perfect night. I will lie on the bed wearing a burgundy lace nightgown. Arita stared at Tren and was already talking to herself, as if Tren was destined not to run away tonight. Listening to Arita's words, a scene could not help but appear in Terran's mind. Arita was lying on the bed wearing a burgundy lace nightgown. Under the dim light, she looked like the half-slapped pig lying on the chopping board in the market. PFF'd. Li Jing. Tren stared at someone with a resentful look. Ahem. Li Jing, who looked at Tren, cleared his throat and said to Arita, this captain is barely a woman, we are just taking a boat. Aha. Arita's face suddenly darkened. My partner is right, we are just taking advantage of the wind, not ducks, so please don't think too much about it, Tren added. After all, you just don't want to be my crew. Arita's face had been pulled down, her expression became more ferocious, and the hammer and mace hit her feet heavily. Of course, we are adventurers. We are not interested in pirates or anything like that. Of course. After Tren finished speaking, he took a step back. If you don't understand some principles, we can also teach you some sword skills. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Jing stepped forward slightly. Ha ha ha, it seems you still don't know where my name comes from. Arita shouted, and then everyone on board the Arita pirates took out their weapons. Boys, kill them for me. In an instant, a battle broke out. Tren and Li Jing nimbly avoided the attack and then drew their swords out of their sheaths. It's not a particularly dangerous scene, so there's no judgment in gambling. Looking at the sword he pulled out, Tren couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Captain Tren, that. Li Jing looked at Arita and didn't know what specific adjective to use. I'll leave that indescribable thing to you, I'll deal with it. After speaking, Li Jing's sword flashed, and they had a fierce battle with Alrita's men. No, Li Jing, you don't have to pretend like this if you don't want to fight her. Seeing Li Jing fighting back and forth with a group of minions, Tren wanted to report someone for match fixing on the spot. What are you talking about? Captain Tren, they are also very strong. Li Jing, who was standing out, replied. I'm sorry, just take a look at yourself. Little baby. At this time, Arita was already swinging the hammer and mace towards Tren, and every time she brought a fatal threat. Bang. Tren avoided the attack with dexterity and jumped back. Don't just hide. Arita swung her hammer and mace wildly, smashing the deck of the ship into holes one after another. But Trendu relied on his instinctive reaction and narrowly avoided Arita's attack. You think I want to hide? Tren gritted his teeth, thought for a moment, and decided to take the initiative and start looking for Arita's flaws. That's it now. Taking advantage of the moment when Arita swung the hammer and mace again, Tren quickly rushed forward and slashed towards Arita with the sword in his hand. Sure enough, you are just a guy who can run away. Your attack is too obvious. Arita, am a big pirate with a bounty of 3 million belly. Aware of Tren's intention, Arita waved her mace vigorously, trying to prevent Tren from approaching. That's why, I bet on your weapons. Big pirate. Looking at the mace coming towards him, Tren had no idea of hiding, and the weapons of both sides collided with each other. In front of the, incredibly hard, sword, Arita's mace is just a piece of tofu. Bang ji, just the moment they collided, Gan Wang easily cut it off like a side plane. Wang, shoo, bang. The cut-off half of the mace spun in midair and finally fell to the front deck. But Terran's sword just stayed on Arita's neck, which was invisible due to her obesity. Gu. Arita felt the cold sword, swallowed her saliva, and slowly raised her hands. It wasn't that she wanted to surrender immediately, but at a glance, her men who had been fighting with Li Jing just now were all lying down at this moment. After all, he is a pirate with a bounty of 3 million belly. He is a pirate who has a place in this weakest sea. Arita is not a pure fool. It can be seen in the anime that she stops Buggy's men and saves Buggy. She is a pirate with a brain, and she can still run the pirate group on the Grand Line without Buggy. It's stylish. Are you, pirate hunters? Arita knelt down calmly and said in a deep voice. I didn't expect that I, Arita, would be targeted by you guys one day. If I had known, I wouldn't have raised the bounty so quickly. Huh, what did you say? Terran frowned when he heard Arita's words. Didn't we say that when we first got on the boat? We are just adventurers who hitch a ride on the wind. Stop pretending. Adventurers no longer exist. Today there are only pirates, marines, and pirate hunters, bounty hunters, on the sea. Come on. If we are really pirate hunters, I just cut off your head, and I would still keep you here until now. Tren sighed. That's because you covet my beauty. Who in the entire East China Sea doesn't know that I, Arita, am the most beautiful woman in the sea? Come on. I got your wish. Damage me hard. Arita shouted with her mouth wide open. Quote. Arita, right. Looking at Arita's astonishing appearance, Tren gritted his teeth and said, if you say that again, I will really kill you. Looking at Tren's expression, Arita calmed down after confirming that the other party was not interested in herself, the most beautiful woman in the sea. Then, if you are really adventurers and want to hitch a ride, where do you want to go? Arita asked tentatively in a low voice. Rog Town. Tren said calmly. What? Arita was immediately startled when she heard where Tren wanted to go. You also said you're not a pirate hunter. Rogue Town is where Marine Colonel Smoker is stationed. Smoker. Hearing this name from Arita's mouth, Terran was still somewhat impressed. In his memory, Smoker seemed to be a user with smoke fruit ability, a Logia. Yes, since he was stationed in Rogue Town, countless pirates who wanted to lead the grand route from Rogue Town have had their dreams interrupted. Therefore, he received many nicknames, such as White Hunter, Mad Dog in the Marine, and so on. Does that have anything to do with me going to Rogue Town? I'm not a pirate. It has something to do with me. I don't want to enter Impel Down. Although my bounty is not worthy of entering there, my dream is not over yet. Arita shouted. Chapter 13 Arita's Suggestions. Advertise here. After Arita finished shouting, she looked at Tren's face without any emotion, and suddenly an unusual idea emerged. I heard that living pirates can get more bounties than dead pirates recently, and they will not be deducted by Marine. And if pirates are caught along the way, other people have proved that those branches of Marine will also. I won't be greedy for merit. Thinking of this, Arita's eyes trembled, because all this is possible, because this is the East China Sea, pirates are weak, and Marines are greedy. Take the nearest branch, such as Carmen, and Colonel Mouse, the 16th branch who recently had a deal with the fishmen. Open black lens bracket summon 60% close black lens bracket. Tren, who was still thinking about going to Rogue Town, couldn't help but be startled when he saw the summoning progress increasing. Then he clicked on it and took a closer look. It turned out that it was the spiritual emotion provided by Arita in front of him, and it was still 15%. Isn't this fat pirate a plot character in One Piece? Tren looked down at the frightened Alita and sighed inwardly. I can't help it. In my time, One Piece had too many updates. Sometimes a plot lasted for 3 years, so Tren didn't have the heart to watch it later. Most of the time, he just waited for a certain broadcast to watch the commentary clips, so there were many plots. He has already forgotten. Bang. Suddenly Arita knelt down heavily and smashed her head against the deck. Please be noble and spare my life. You just don't want to go to Rogue Town. It will kill people, Lord Terran. Okay. Terran looked at Arita and breathed a sigh of relief. Of course, it was not because of her kindness, but because she provided him with 15% of his spiritual emotions, which was much more than Jesus' 5%. And the side note is that there must be other plot characters in the East China Sea now, and there are only 1 or 2 in Rogue Town. If I run there now, wouldn't I lose a lot? At this point, Terran thought of a guy, the fish man Aaron. This guy is 100% still dominating the East China Sea. If you don't want to go, I'm not the kind of unreasonable person. I still respect personal wishes. Terran patted Arita's broad shoulder, then walked to the edge of the boat and looked at the sea. Really? Arita raised her eyes slightly and stared at Tren's back. Of course. Tren Kaido said calmly, and then turned around. It doesn't matter if you don't go to Rogue Town. Then you should know that there is a group of fishmen in the East China Sea, right? The fishman Aaron with a bounty of 20 million belly. Arita blurted out instantly. Because big pirates like Aaron who ran from the Grand Route to a small place still have a reputation. Well, that's right, it's him. Do you know where he is? Tren nodded. A fish man. Is it one of those things with a long tail on the lower body and a human upper body? Li Jing asked. You're talking about mermaids, we're talking about fish men. Tren rolled his eyes. Is there any difference? Li Jing frowned. The difference is still very big. Thinking of the mermaids on Fishman Island, Tren still yearned for them. Just when Loon and Li Jing were bickering, Arita said, if you want to find him, I can take you to Kokoyasi village. As for the Murloc paradise created by Aaron, I will be discovered as soon as my boat gets close. After all, they are Murlocs and the sea is their strength. Quote. Kokoja village. That's one of the 20 villages ruled by Aaron's group. The fishman Aaron has a deal with Marine from the 16th branch, so Marine leaves these 20 villages alone. But Kokoja village is the closest to their paradise. Arita explained, and then she was afraid of Tren's rejection, so she quickly said. And, I heard that the oranges produced in that village are also a specialty of the East China Sea. I think you too will like them. Murloc, orange, Nami. These keywords were connected together, and Tren immediately had two impressions of this village. Isn't it the hometown of the little thieving cat Nami? Then let's go eat this so-called East China Sea specialty. Tren waved his hand, and he seemed to have seen his second partner waving to him. Everything depends on Captain Tren. Li Jing also smiled slightly. No matter it was a previous accident or something else, as long as he followed Captain Tren, there would always be a way. Okay, no problem, I'm at the helm now. Seeing that Tren agreed, Arita ran to take control of the rudder without saying a word, and controlled the pirate ship to set off towards Kokoja village, for fear that Tren would change his mind temporarily. There is a huge difference between a big ship and a small ship. Arita's pirate ship quickly arrived at the island where Kokoja village is located after half a day's journey. 2 adults, the Kokoja village is ahead. A pirate rubbed his hands tremblingly and said in a low voice. On the deck, Tren and Li Jing were feasting on sea beast barbecue. It was a sea beast that Li Jing easily split into 2. In order to avoid waste and out of curiosity, Tren asked the people of the Arita pirates to pull the meat onto the ship. Are we there yet? Tren bit off the last piece of meat on the stick bone, threw the bone on the table like trash, then took the rag handed over by another pirate and carefully wiped his hands and mouth. Yes, the island in front is Kokoja village. We can dock in 5 minutes. Arita, who was at the helm personally, said with a smile. We're finally here. Tren stood up and looked into the distance, seeing the island in front of him getting closer and closer. He was full of expectations. It was not just a village, but full summoning progress waving to him. Another village with unique scenery is completely different from the windmill village. Li Jing also sighed, following Captain Tren, there will always be something new. Get ready to dock, kids. Suddenly, Arita shouted at the top of her voice as usual. The group of pirates under her also quickly took out their weapons like a reflex and shouted in agreement, robbing them all, for the gold and silver treasures. Huh, Tren and the 2 looked confused. I'm sorry, I'm used to it. Arita slumped like a deflated rubber ball, and her men quickly hid their weapons behind their backs, showing awkward smiles. We're here. Arita looked at the 2 of them with a smile. Yes. Tren nodded, and as the ship docked, Tren and Li Jing jumped onto the beach. As a pirate, Arita certainly couldn't take the normal village harbor, so they were on the other side of the village. Feeling the soft sandy beach under your feet, as if you were stepping on cotton, and the warm sunshine gently stroking your face like a mother's hand, Tren felt particularly comfortable. He turned back to Alita and showed a bright smile. Thank you. Let's go. As soon as the words were spoken, Arita's pirate ship turned like an arrow at an extremely fast speed, and then disappeared into the vast sea. No, are we so scary? Tren looked helpless. Li Jing touched his beard and said thoughtfully, maybe they have other important things. Forget it, never mind, let's go. Tren shook his head in relief, and then strode forward. Chapter 14 Kokoja Village. Advertise here. As Tren and Li Jing landed on the island, they walked towards the village. Kokoja Village and Windmill Village are villages and towns with completely different styles. Some of the villagers in Windmill Village are mainly herders, so there are many windmills and pastures on the island. Kokoja Village is completely different. There are more houses in small villages outside the village, and the open space outside the village is full of orange trees. As they approached the village, they were immediately attracted by the orange trees in the garden, with orange fruits hanging all over the branches. Many villagers are busy picking oranges, and the air is filled with the aroma of oranges. Wow, there are so many oranges. Li Jing said excitedly, it's a special feature, but they don't seem happy. Li Jing looked at the listless expressions of the picking villagers and couldn't help but put away his initial excitement. You will definitely be unhappy working for others. Tren said, and he also noticed this. After all, Kokoja is now under Aaron's high-pressure policy, and all the money earned has to be handed over. They can only be happy. Let's go. Let's go into the village and have a look. Tren called Li Jing, and then stepped forward. Nami was his target. After all, the main plot characters provide more spiritual emotions than ordinary plot characters, I guess. Okay, Captain Tren. Li Jing heard the voice and quickly followed. After a while, the two crossed the orange grove and arrived at the center of Kokoja village, but before Tren could find Nami. A clear middle-aged voice came. Who are you? How did you come to our Kokoja village? Tren and Li Jing turned around and saw a man with a thick black beard, wearing a dark brown military uniform and a hat with green and gold decorations. A middle-aged man with a serious facial expression and many surgical scars on his face appeared in front of them, his eyes showing vigilance. You are. Looking at this guy who looked like the terrifying Bark, Tren frowned. My name is Jian, the police stationed on Kokoja Island. Jian said calmly. The scars on his face were all cut by the Arlong pirates. So it's you. Looking at this middle-aged man, Tren remembered that he was the man who liked Nami's adoptive mother Belmir. Do you know me? Looking at Tren's reaction, Jian frowned. Haha, of course I don't know you. We just arrived at Kokoja village today. Tren waved his hand. We are adventurers. We heard that the oranges on this island are delicious, so we came here to taste them. Tren patted Li Jing's shoulder and explained. That's right. Li Jing nodded. Adventurer. Looking at this combination of an old man and a young man, Jian subconsciously recognized Tren as a noble from a certain kingdom. As for why they are not pirates, that is because since the Arlong pirates ruled Kokoja village and established their base camp here, few pirates dared to come here, and the wanted posters in his room did not have the two Trons. People. However, when Jian looked at the swords on their waists, he suddenly thought, since he is a noble, then the person responsible for protecting him must be very strong. Thinking of this, Jian first turned his attention to Li Jing, well, the sense of trust from the middle-aged man. If you want to taste oranges, I will take you to Belle. I know there is a family with delicious oranges. Really? Then I'm going to have a taste. Seeing Jian's brief disappointment, Tren still had a smile on his face and followed him with Li Jing. After a while, Jian led the two of them to a house. The house was quite big, and you could clearly see that there was a small orange grove behind the house. Nuaochigao. Jian shouted. Jian. After a while, a female voice came from inside the house, and then a woman opened the door. He has black leather, a yellow camisole, short beautiful blue hair, a red hairband on his head and forehead, and a tattoo on his right hand that extends to his chest. Who are they? Nuaochigao, who was playing the gate of opening, was surprised when he looked at Tren and Li Jing standing behind Aw Fitness. The foreign adventurers said they wanted to experience the specialty oranges of our Kokosia village. Jian explained to Nuaochigao. No, why do I feel like a pimp? Tren muttered to himself while watching the conversation between Jian and Nuaochigao. Especially when comparing orange to notch high. As that's so. After listening to Jian's explanation, Nuaochigao introduced himself enthusiastically and extended his hand. My name is Nuaochigao, Jenny Thron. This is Chentangguan Li Jing. After the introduction, Nuaochigao invited the two of them into the house. The layout of the room is very simple, no different from ordinary people's homes, except that there are a few photo frames in front of the table, which are photos of the Belmir family taken in the orange orchard. At this time, Nuaochigao came over with 2 cups of black tea and some freshly picked oranges. Of course she knew the purpose of Jian introducing Tren and Tren to her. She might have other ideas, but more importantly, she wanted her to make more money and reduce Nami's burden. After all, 100 million Baileys is not easy to earn. Coupled with Tren's young and handsome appearance, it would be easy to identify him as a noble of a certain country. The village of Kokosalia is famous for its sweet and juicy oranges, and it has attracted countless people to taste them in the past. Nochgeo introduced with a smile. Li Jing had already started to peel the orange and began to taste it. Captain Tren, this is really delicious. It's really good. Tren tasted the sweet orange and looked around for Nami. That's right. I'm quite confident in the oranges I grow, haha. Nuaochigao said with a smile, and then continued the introduction. At this time, Tren, who had never seen Nami, asked, Miss Nagao, why are you alone in your family, and where are your sister and mother? Seeing Tren looking at the photos on the table, Nuaochigao's expression suddenly darkened. My mother has passed away. As for my sister, she has traveled far away and is not in the village. Did you go out to steal something? Tren thought to himself. After all, Nami is nicknamed the Little Thief Cat. In order to collect 100 million belly, she might be on a pirate ship at this time. What's the matter, Mr. Tren? Nuaochigao looked at Tren in a daze and couldn't help but remind him softly. It's okay, I just think the orange-haired girl in the photo looks familiar. Tren smiled slightly. Then you may have met my sister when you were outside. Nuaochigao didn't think much about it. It's impossible for Nami to steal this boy's things, right? Would you two go and see the orangery? Is that okay? Li Jing was the first to speak. He really liked this orange. After a while, he showed off all the dishes from Nuaochi high-end. Li Jing, eat less. Eating so many oranges will cause diarrhea. Tren reminded. Haha, Mr. Tron is right. Eating too many oranges can indeed lead to diarrhea. Nuaochigao said with a smile. Okay, Li Jing nodded, and then the three of them walked towards the orange garden. Chapter 15 Sashimi. The two of them followed Nochgeo to the lush orange grove. Sunlight shines on the ground through the gaps in the leaves, forming Madara's mottled light and shadow. The air is filled with the faint scent of orange flowers, making people feel peaceful and happy. Nuo Chigao led them to an orange tree full of golden fruits. She skillfully picked a few oranges and handed them to Tren and Li Jing. Try them, they will have a different flavor in this state. Tren and Li Jing took the orange and peeled it open, revealing the tender and juicy flesh inside. They took a bite and immediately felt an unprecedented sweetness and freshness. The delicate and layered texture of the orange was completely different from what they had just eaten in the house. Nuo Chigao's own orangery is of a certain scale. It can be said that a large open space behind the house is planted with orange trees, and the layout is also 2 rows. I didn't expect that there is such a big orange grove behind Miss Nochgeo's house. I thought it was just a small one. Tren couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the rows of orange trees in front of him. These were pioneered by my mother. Nuo Chigao looked at the orange grove, his eyes half dark, and finally returned to normal, and continued to introduce his own oranges. Summon 65%. Is it only 5%? Or is it that the characters who have a moderate impact on the original plot have very low acquisition power? Looking at the system interface, Tren stared at Nuo Chigao's back and thought to himself. While Tren and Noki were in the orange grove, on the street outside the house, groups of fishmen were walking on the street. These fishmen were wearing old fishing nets and holding crude weapons. The leader was a yellow croaker fish man. At this time, his eyes were greedy and cunning, and he announced loudly, "It's coming, it's coming. Everyone in Kokoja village, please pay the protection fee." After that, he opened the empty big bag and looked at the villagers. "No, we have paid 3 times this month and we have no money anymore," shouted a bold villager. "Oh," the yellow croaker fishman frowned, picked out his ears, glanced sideways at the villager who spoke, and threw out the harpoon in his hand without saying a word. Ah, the harpoon penetrated directly into the villager's thigh, causing blood to flow out. "You lowly guys, have you forgotten where this is?" the fish man said as he slowly walked to the fallen villager and stepped on his thigh that was penetrated. Ah, the villagers wailed louder and even fainted. A lowly person should behave like a lowly person. Who allowed you to scream indiscriminately? PFF'd. The yellow croaker fishman directly pulled out the harpoon, and then looked around for a week. "So you're going to hand it over, or you're not going to hand it over?" "No." A Jian, wearing a brown military uniform, stepped forward. "It's you again." The yellow croaker man looked at Jian, a little helpless. Every time they come to collect money, Jian will jump out, and the result is those hideous scars on Jian. It's Aaron's rule to pay once a month. The so-called second and third time are all decided by you. Really, talking nonsense will lead to death. The yellow croaker man walked up to Jian. His tall body made Jian look very small. The next moment, the yellow croaker fish man directly grabbed Jian's neck and lifted him up. If the boss hadn't valued Nami, you would have been killed by us." The fish man lowered his voice and chuckled in his ear. After saying that, with a bang, the yellow croaker man actually threw Jian out himself, while the other 2 younger brothers he brought with him had already begun to collect the money happily. On the other side, the 3 people who returned to the orange grove, Tren, had already walked out when they heard the villagers screaming. Jian. Nuo Chigao looked at Jian who was knocked aside and quickly ran over to help him up. Nuo Chigao. Blood dripped from the corner of Jian's mouth. Damn fishmen. Nuo Chigao gritted his teeth and raised his eyes to stare at the 3 fishmen who were collecting money. "Is this the Murloc, Captain Tren?" Li Jing looked at the 3 Murlocs and said. "That's right, it's completely different from a mermaid, right?" It was also the first time for Tren to see a mermaid, which was completely different from what he saw on TV. Indeed, it's just like an incomplete demon. The Shang dynasty that Li Jing lived in was not the Shang dynasty in history. The Shang dynasty and the 10 cold Shang dynasties still belong to the mythical series. While Tren and Li Jing were chatting, a blue-mouthed Murloc walked up to them with a sack open. "Hey, you understand." Tren and Li Jing were stunned by the sudden request, especially Li Jing. He first looked down at the money in the sack, stretched out his hand, and grabbed a handful. "Are the monsters here so good? We don't have a rule about giving money to people there." "Hey, what are you doing? I asked you to put money in, not to take money out to feed." The blue-mouthed fish man immediately tightened his grip on the sack. "Huh, isn't it for me?" Li Jing looked at Bailey in his hand and blinked. "Ha ha ha ha." Tren burst into laughter watching this scene. As a result of this commotion, the other 2 fishmen also walked towards the 2 of them. "What's going on?" the yellow fish man asked, and the blue-mouthed fish man explained what just happened. "You 2 are very unfamiliar." The yellow croaker glanced at the 2 of them. On the other side, Jian, who stood up slowly with the help of Nuo Chigao, explained directly, "The 2 of them are just adventurers passing by, not villagers." "As that's so?" The yellow croaker nodded in a daze, and then chuckled at Tren. "Then you also have to pay. After all, from the moment you step into this island, everything here is protected by Boss Aaron. You want to collect money from me?" Tren stopped laughing, raised the corners of his mouth and stared at the yellow croaker in front of him. "This is the territory of the Aaron pirates." The fishman directly showed the sign on his left arm. Since you are in the East China Sea, you should know the name of our boss, Murloc, Aaron, right? The blue-mouthed fishman agreed. Hurry up and pay the money. The other fishman with a long mouth raised the corners of his mouth confidently. What do you mean? As long as I am strong, I can also collect money from you. Tren stepped forward and looked at the three fishmen. Or, as long as I'm strong, I can beat back the fishman Aaron you call and make fish head soup right now. Looking at Tren's calm eyes, the fishman's expression darkened. Boy, can't you see the current situation clearly? As soon as he finished speaking, the other two fishmen approached Tren and Li Jing, holding the harpoon firmly in their hands. Ha ha, Tren chuckled, aren't you the ones who can't see the situation clearly? Li Jing, tonight we will invite the villagers of Kokoja village to have fish fillet hot pot. Got it, Li Jing unsheathed his sword directly, I'm the best at cutting fish fillets. Make sure the knife is as thin as a cicada's wings. It will be cooked as soon as it is boiled. What do you want to do? Before the fishman could react, a bloodstain appeared on his neck. When? The yellow croaker covered his neck and stared at Tren with his fish eyes. Although I'm not particularly strong, I can still be considered a swordsman. Do you think it's okay to be so close to me? Tren slowly retracted, gambling, and then hid his body to look at the twitching yellow croaker. People. It's just right. You need to bleed when eating sashimi. Relax a little and it will pass quickly. It's normal to feel dizzy. Evil. Devil. The yellow croaker wanted to speak out, but Tren's knife just cut off his throat. The most important thing is that he saw that his other two companions had been killed by Li Jing. Chapter 16 Promising Young Man Jenny Thrun. Advertise here. Kokoja Village, a quiet village, is currently immersed in the gentle embrace of the setting sun. As the sun gradually sets in the west, the clouds on the horizon are dyed with a touch of light gold, gradually deepening into a blazing red, as if the entire sky is drawing a perfect end to the day that is about to end. The huts in the village are scattered in a scattered manner, and the roofs are covered with golden straw, which forms a sharp contrast with the surrounding green-orange groves. The light of the setting sun penetrated the sparse woods and sprinkled on the path, paving a road shining with golden powder, as if leading the returning villagers to their warm homes. It's a pity that on the side of the village road, the villagers who were supposed to go home with the sunset stared blankly at the unbelievable scene in front of them. Li Jing, is this really fish meat? Captain Tren, the meat of monsters is a great tonic in my place. The reason why my son Neja is so strong is because when my mother was pregnant with him, I arranged for this meat to be a tonic all day long. True or false? Li Jing, I never speak big words, but this is different from the monsters I have seen before. It is indeed very similar to fish. It doesn't matter, I'll kill them all anyway, and I've already told you that I'll treat the whole village to a fish fillet hot pot, so you can peel them carefully. The laughter of Tren and Li Jing intertwined with the sound of fish filleting with swords, forming a peaceful and vivid rural scene. They. At this moment, Aegean, the policeman stationed in Kokoja village, had already stood up. Although he said that because of Belmir's death, he wanted to treat this group of people all the time. The fishmen who oppressed them all the time, ate their flesh alive and ate their bones. But when I really saw this scene, the fear in my heart slowly rose again. You must know that it was not a fish. It was a fish man. Aegean, are they really adventurers? Belmire told me before, but she never said that adventurers are like this. Nuochigao also subconsciously grabbed Aegean's arm. Although she was grateful for Tren's help to the Kokoja villagers, this scene was still a bit scary. As night falls, the village lights begin to light up, and warm lights shine from the windows of the huts. Tren and Li Jing also finished their work. After cleaning up some residue, only sashimi was left. Looking at it this way, if you don't say anything, everyone will definitely think it is fish. Looking at the thin or thick-cut fish fillets, Tren clapped his hands. At the same time, Aegean and Nuochigao suddenly provided spiritual emotions, summoning 70%. Looking at the progress that he was about to be summoned again, Tren raised his eyebrows and looked back at Aegean and Nuochigao not far away. Is it because I killed these three fishmen that they are grateful to me? That's definitely the case. There's no way that Tren just likes to help others. The sharp increase in progress made Terran's original happy mood even happier, so he shouted, "Everyone in Kokoja village, why are you still standing there? Go home, get a bowl, and eat fish hot pot together. Don't worry, everyone. Thanks to Li Jing's skills, all the meat has been deboned, so feel free to eat it." Li Jing also smiled. How can they be nobles? They are obviously the living kings of hell. Aegean slowly turned around with trembling feet and gave the villagers who were staring at him a look. As if to say, why don't you go back and get the bowl? Do you want to be sliced? After receiving the signal from the station policeman Aegean, the villagers who reacted ran home one after another. After a while, there were pots and pans everywhere. A large pot stood in the middle of the village road. The villagers in Kokoja village looked at the boiling soup in the pot and Li Jing who kept putting the fish fillets in. No one made a sound. Ahem. Suddenly Trent coughed, and all the villagers' eyes suddenly focused on him. Looking at this scene, Terran couldn't help but be stunned. I was just choked by the cigarette. Why were they looking at me? But then he thought of the mental emotions of Aegean and Nuochigao just now, so Tren smiled slightly, stood up slowly and said, Everyone in Kokoja village, I know that everyone's gratitude to me is overwhelming, but this is really only my duty. I, Jenny Tren, am a young person of the new era with ideals and lofty aspirations. I sneer at this exploitative and oppressive behavior and detest it. I think everyone with a conscience knows this. Yeah. Looking at Tren, the villagers nodded like chickens pecking at rice. This fish hot pot meal also represents my feelings. Everyone can just do what you want. Tren ended softly with a smile, then picked up the fish and ate it. Actually, it really just tastes like fish meat. If I have to say the difference, it's that the meat quality of each fish species is different. Everyone, eat quickly. If you don't eat, you won't give me the face of Captain Tren. Li Jing echoed, using the chopsticks in his hands to fish out the meat in the soup like a treasure hunt. Tisk, Li Jing, how can you say such official clichés here? Tren couldn't help but frowned. It's not like you don't know that the villagers have been working hard all day. They will get up early tomorrow to do their own things, and there are still many tiring tasks like deworming orange trees. After saying this, Tren glanced sideways. Stare at everyone. So just like I said, everyone can do whatever they want. If you want to go back and rest earlier, you can go back. As I said at the beginning, I am a promising young man and I am well aware of everyone's suffering. Looking at Tren's smiling face, Aegean was already sure that as long as anyone dared to go back, the hot pot the next day would be them instead of the fish. So after Aegean and Nuo Chigao looked at each other, they took the initiative and picked up the food. Fish meat. Mr. Tren is right, everyone, hurry up and eat. After all, we have to work tomorrow. If we don't eat, there will be no tomorrow, haha. Seeing Aegean and Nuo Chigao taking the lead, other villagers also started using their chopsticks. Although they had never tried this fish meat, under the usual squeezing hatred. After these villagers spoke once, they no longer had any worries, and soon the laughter gradually emerged. He can be happy now. Jian, who was chewing fish meat, looked at Tren and sighed. Aegean, I didn't expect Mr. Tren, who looks so amiable, to be so forward-thinking. Nuo Chigao picked up a large bowl of fish and said while eating. Originally, I saw that the two of them had swords on their waists, and I wanted to use them to deal with Aaron, but I didn't expect that they were more devilish than Aaron. Murloc Hotpot. Summon 85%. It's gone up again. Looking at the interface, Tren couldn't help but be happy, so he looked at Aegean in the corner with a smile. It's delicious, it's delicious. Seeing Tren looking at him, Aegean quickly raised his bowl. You're welcome. Tren, who couldn't hear Aegean's voice, thought he was thanking himself, so he raised his hand to express his gratitude. Li Jing, I am indeed a promising young man. Tren retracted his hand and sighed as he looked at the scene in front of him. I think at this moment, everyone in Kokoja village is full of gratitude to us. Yes, Captain Tren has a broad mind and uses the flesh of monster beasts to enjoy the people. Oh, we are just two nice people x2. Chapter 17 Aaron Paradise. Advertise here. The people in the village ate the fish and meat provided for 3 people and almost finished it quickly. Everyone also went back to their homes early in the morning. As for the remnants of the 3 murlocs, they must not be thrown into the sea, so they became nutrients for the orange trees. Tren and Li Jing also stayed in the room provided by the owner of the hotel in Kokoja village. Nuochi Gaojia. Aegean and Nuo Chigao were sitting on the sofa in silence, with 2 cups of black tea on the table. Nuo Chigao, what do you think about letting the 2 of them deal with Aaron? Aegean took a sip of black tea and said. Mr. Tren is an adventurer. He shouldn't be interested in this kind of thing. Nochgeo refused. Today, there were only 3 fishmen and he asked the villagers to start a pot together. Then if all the fishmen in Aaron's paradise are killed by Tren and the others, then Kokoja village won't need to grow any oranges and just develop the sashimi industry. And when it was time to fall back, Tren really brought Aaron over to make fish head soup. Should they drink it or not? After all, Aaron could be soaking in the soup. So no matter how you look at it, Tren is not a suitable candidate. But they are very strong. If you can use money to get them to take action. Aegean wanted to continue, but was interrupted by Nuo Chigao. Aegean, can you guarantee that Mr. Tren will not become the next Aaron? After all, their mental state. After speaking, Nochgeo did not continue. Jian also remembered the smiles of Tren and Li Jing at the end of the hot pot banquet, and he couldn't help but shudder. Looking at it this way, they are indeed not a good choice. Yes, Nuo Chi raised his chin. It would be great if there was someone with a strong sense of justice, a simple mind, a relationship with Kokoja village, and a marine background. In this way, even the colonel can clean up together, and our Kokoja village will not be implicated for cooperating with pirates. Quote. Nojigao is right to think so. After all, in the eyes of Akainu and other super justice factions, these 20 villages that would rather support the Arlong pirates than go to other branches to find marine for help can definitely be classified as pirates. Accomplice. But, after listening to Nuochigao's words, Jian sighed deeply. Does this kind of person really exist? Or will he come to Kokoja village? From Aegean's perspective, letting Tren help is the best choice. Alas, both of them sighed, and then fell into silence. Time flies, and 3 days fly by. Except when collecting protection fees, the fish people would not come to the village, so Tren and Li Jing were able to leisurely visit this big island. However, on the other side of the island, there is a building that looks like a garden standing out. A high wall was built around it, like a solid barrier, and a wide moat, like a protective city river. Surrounded by the wall in the middle is a towering ancient-style tower, several stories high and majestic. Next to the moat inside the wall, there are many beach chairs placed on the ground, just like a happy paradise scene. This is the Aaron Empire created by Aaron here, also called the Fishman Paradise or Aaron's Paradise. At this moment, in this joyful paradise, countless fish people are immersed in drinking and having fun. Among them, the most active one is the octopus man named Xiaoba. He is seen skillfully grilling delicious skewers and dancing his 6 flexible tentacles, as if showing a unique performance. As the strings of fragrant barbecue were completed, Xiaoba stopped what he was doing and looked at the group of fishmen in the paradise. He frowned slightly and said to himself, "There are really more and more people." At this moment, a striking figure appeared in front of Xiaoba. This fish man has a long mouth, yellow hair fluttering in the wind, skin showing a light blue color, and a reddish mark on both sides of his cheeks. The most special thing is that he has the ability to shoot mouth cannons, which looks very interesting. This fish man is Chu. Chu held a plate full of food in his hand, walked up to Xiaoba and said, "I heard that the boss is going out to find a new partner this time." Chirp, there was a hint of curiosity and excitement in his voice. "Isn't that right? The boss always said that the more partners the better." Xiaoba had long been accustomed to Aaron leaving to recruit other fishmen to join the team. After all, Aaron is very ambitious, and the existing 20 villages can no longer satisfy his desires. Otherwise, he would not recruit Nami to join his team and ask her to draw sea charts to open up wider areas. A large number of people can prove our strength. Wearing a black karate uniform and a tall and sturdy fish man black belt, he said in a low tone. He is a manta ray, so he has a pair of wings like wings from his upper arms to his elbows. This manta ray named Black Belt is known as the 3 core cadres of the Aaron Pirates together with Hachi the Octopus and Chu the Manta Ray. Not only do they have the strength of penultimate, but they are also the top combat power in the pirate group after Aaron. Whenever Aaron goes out to recruit other fishmen to join the team, this paradise is left to the 3 of them to take care of it. However, there are disadvantages to having more people. Xiao Hachi couldn't help but sigh. Among the Aaron pirates, he seemed to be the only one who kept a clear mind, while the rest were intoxicated with beautiful fantasy pie. Among Xiaoba, there is something in your words. Chirp, the fishman Chu keenly noticed the abnormality and raised his eyes to stare at Xiaoba. We are currently able to control 20 villages because of our collusion with Colonel Rat of the Marine 16 branch, coupled with the fame of Jinbei's eldest brother Shichibukai. But as the boss continues to recruit new members, the scale of our pirate group will inevitably expand. By that time, it will definitely attract the attention of other branch marines. After all, there are only so many gaps. Xiaoba's worries are not unreasonable, and Yu Rencho and Black Belt also realize the seriousness of the problem. Xiao Hachi is right, this is indeed a problem. The Black Belt said solemnly, it is indeed thanks to Brother Jinbei that we can develop safely now. Then what do we have to fear now that we are relying on the power of Jinbei's eldest brother, 7 warlords of the sea? Ju, the fishman Chu blinked. Brother Jinbei's ability has become a Shichibukai. The strength of Brother Aaron is far inferior. Moreover, Brother Jinbei has always disliked Boss Aaron's behavior. Once Brother Jinbei denies it, Boss Aaron's pirate group will be in great trouble. Quote. Hachi praised Jinbei, but the other fishmen didn't care at all. After all, even Aaron was released from the underwater prison because Jinbei became Shichibukai. The 3 of them were also crew members of the Jinbei pirates before, but they were followed by Aaron. Gone. In that case, we will try to persuade the boss when he comes back. Indeed. Chirp, Chapter 18. The incident happened. Advertise here. After discussing the persuasion strategy, the 3 of them started to get down to business. The 3 of them cadres don't have so much time to party with their murlocs. The purpose of bringing all the murlocs together this time is to register the new murlocs and assign them to their respective subordinates. Okay. Since everyone is gathered here, it means that the friendship between fishmen is incomparable to lower-level humans. The Black Belt was the first to speak, his voice was slightly dull. Boss Aaron. As the Black Belt finished speaking, all the murlocs in the paradise cheered for Aaron. Humans are inferior and lowly. We fishmen should be the primates. But humans have occupied the land. I remember when Brother Tiger climbed up to the Red Continent alone and saved countless people. This also includes humans. But Brother Tiger died at the hands of humans in the end. Quote. Propaganda and brainwashing before joining the gang are necessary, but the death of Fisher Tiger was indeed the turning point that changed Aaron's life, making Aaron completely discriminate against humans. Tiger is a hero. The fishmen who felt the same way covered their faces and cried bitterly. Boss Aaron was on Brother Tiger's boat back then, so Boss Aaron is the one who leads the spirit of Brother Tiger. So we are also following in the footsteps of Brother Tiger. Good. Yes. The Black Belt swallowed, turned to Xiaoba and nodded, shouting until his throat was dry. Seeing this, Xiaoba also took a step forward, and took out paper and pen with 6 hands dancing. Since everyone wants to follow in the footsteps of Brother Tiger, let's register first. No problem. The Murlocs came forward to register one after another, while Xiaoba took notes carefully on the side, but these Murlocs were all found by Aaron from the Murloc Street. After all, fish people who have a family, a job, and a happy life will not run away from home all the way. The fishman Chu stood aside, watching all this, feeling secretly proud in his heart. He knows that these Murlocs will become the most loyal followers of Boss Aaron, and they will follow him to conquer the land and let humans see the power of Murlocs. From today on, we want all humans to know that fish people are the masters of this world. Chirp! Yu Rencho suddenly shouted loudly. The fish people responded enthusiastically, their eyes full of fighting spirit. The corners of the black belt's mouth raised slightly. He was looking forward to the future journey and leading this group of brave fishmen to follow Aaron to create their own glory. Soon, the new Murlocs were assigned, and corresponding personnel were assigned to the 3 cadres. However, such large gatherings often expose some problems. Xiaoba, 3 guys in our team are missing. A panting fishman ran to Xiaoba and reported. Xiaoba frowned and tried to remember who this fishman who suddenly appeared was. Due to the large number of people under his command, it was really difficult for him to remember everyone's name and face one by one. Are you? Xiaoba asked hesitantly. The fishman quickly introduced himself. I am the captain of the 3rd team of your 2nd team. Originally, there were 4 people under me, but except for one person who came to report, the other 3 people completely lost contact and had no news at all. After all, the domineering and powerful Aaron at this moment has a large number of people under his command. Even a cadre like Xiaoba has several echelons and squads under his command. After listening to the fishman's explanation, Xiaoba frowned when he learned that the 3 missing fishmen were under his jurisdiction. Do you think they will return to Fishman Island? You know, sometimes everyone misses their hometown. Xiaoba asked doubtfully. However, the fishman shook his head decisively and denied. Absolutely impossible. Then he added an explanation. The 3 of them have long been unable to gain a foothold in Fishman Street. Besides, their life is so comfortable now, how could they choose to leave? Then what do you mean? Xiaoba asked. The fishman raised his head, fixed his gaze on Xiaoba, and said solemnly, I suspect they were probably killed by humans. Human. After hearing this, Xiaoba's face became solemn and he stared at the fishman. Are you so sure? It must be humans. Apart from those lowly and inferior humans, who else dares to touch us here? The fishman affirmed. Xiaoba ignored the fishman, but waved to his remaining team members and asked coldly, you should know what they left to do, right? Facing the cadre Xiaoba, the fishman pursed his lips tightly and looked at his captain immediately. Xiaoba frowned and scolded. Just tell me, what are you looking at him for? Under Xiaoba's majesty, the fishman could not withstand the pressure and said tremblingly, Yellow Croaker fishman and the others are going to collect protection fees. No matter how stupid Xiaoba was, he immediately understood the reason why those 3 guys disappeared. So, he instantly turned his gaze to the squad leader and roared angrily, what on earth is going on? You tell yourself. The team leader showed no fear and argued confidently, we just want to get some money to spend with those lowly humans. Anyway, they are all raised by Boss Aaron, and Boss Aaron will also support me. Under Aaron's influence, the Murlocs under his command do not regard humans as human beings, and even think that they can be bullied at will. It's that group of humans who dare to attack us. This is unforgivable, the fishman shouted. Xiaoba was about to say something, but Yu Rencho patted him on the shoulder. He's right. No matter what, if humans dare to attack us, they are seeking death, chirp. Xiaoba, you are too kind. As soon as Boss Aaron left, these humans started to make moves. The black belt's face was so gloomy that it seemed like it could drip water. He was very angry at the behavior of humans. Under Aaron's rule, no Murlocs had been killed by humans for a long time. No matter what, human beings must pay the price for what they have done. After saying that, the black belt suddenly turned his head and stared at the fishman team leader like an eagle. Hurry up, they are the last to go. Which village? Kokoja village. That's Nami's village. The fishman Chu couldn't help but hesitate. After all, at this time, Nami's relationship with them was still very close. Every time Nami came back from stealing money, everyone would warmly welcome her. Since this is Nami's village, we will only attack the culprits and let other irrelevant people go. The black belt's tone was firm and decisive. Chapter 19. The fishman comes to the door. Advertise here. Oh, at this time, the new fishmen shouted loudly and raised their weapons. La, black belt, you and Chu should stay here. This is a matter for my subordinates, and I should take the initiative. Xiao Ba said looking at black belt and Chu. Xiao Ba, can you do it yourself? The black belt looked at Xiao Ba and was a little hesitant. Don't look at what Xiao Ba just said. In fact, all fish people who know him well know that this guy is a master of talking, and he can talk a lot during a fight. Hachi-chan, I am a 6-sword style. Hachi smiled, and moved his hands with 6 swords. Let Xiao Ba go. We're just human beings, we don't need 2 or 3 cadres, chirp, Yu Rencho said. And Boss Aaron said when he left, let us take care of our own territory, we can't all go. Chirp. Chu is right. Xiaoba nodded. Well, he looked at the two black belts thinking for a moment, and finally nodded, then just listened to Chu. Then I will investigate the matter personally and find out the whereabouts of the three fishmen. After saying that, Xiaoba took 6 of his capable subordinates and headed towards Kokoja village. Why 6? Because each of them had to help Xiaoba get a sword. At the hotel entrance in Kokoja village, Tren and Li Jing were sitting on the table and chairs. There was a newspaper, a plate of oranges and 2 cups of black tea on the table in front of them. Gazi. Tren sat on the chair, swaying slightly, staring intently at the newspaper in his hand. Most of the content in the newspaper was about the New World 4 emperors. However, a familiar figure suddenly broke into his eyes. That was the rising supernova, Fire Fist, Portgas d'Ace, whose bounty was even greater. It's as high as 90 million Baileys per memory. Ace is not considered his biological son yet, but he will be soon. Looking at the young man in the newspaper who was about to break into the New World, Madara, Tren couldn't help but laugh. Captain Tren, Aegean said yesterday that if we want to leave, he can provide us with a small boat on behalf of the village. Li Jing, who has already fallen in love with the oranges in Kokoja village, said while peeling the oranges. So good. They said they wanted to repay us. As that's so, Tren's eyes darkened slightly. In fact, he had found out clearly in the past 2 or 3 days. Not only was Nami not around, but Eren seemed to have left as well. But to be honest, Tren doesn't want to pay attention to these trivial things. If he meets him, he will go there. If he doesn't meet him, forget it. Anyway, it's just to refresh his mind and emotions. Then we should go, Tren said slowly. Now we are just a little short of the progress of the next summons. Since the main plot characters are not here, we won't waste time here. Just when Tren and Li Jing were discussing their departure, the originally bustling street suddenly became quiet. The children who were playing on the roadside also ran back to their homes. Many villagers only dared to peek through the small gaps in the windows. At the end of the street, a group of fishmen were walking slowly, led by the octopus fishman Xiaoba, and 6 miscellaneous fishmen behind Xiaoba. They spread out, seeming to be looking for something. Along the way, they carefully observed the surrounding environment and did not miss any clues. Are you sure the 3 of them are coming to Kokoja village? Xiaoba turned around and asked. The fishman team leader nodded repeatedly. They must be coming to Kokoja village. There seems to be no trace of a fight. Xiaoba frowned. Here, suddenly a bastard fisherman shouted in a remote alley. Xiaoba, who heard the sound, quickly ran over with someone. Sure enough, even though 3 days have passed, if you are careful, you can still find some signs of fighting. There are still traces of blood on this land, and fishmen are discerning about the smell of blood among their companions. It's the blood of a fishman. A fishman lying on the ground and sniffing carefully nodded his head solemnly. Especially since he could feel that his partner was bleeding heavily at that time, otherwise it would not be possible for the smell to remain for so long. Baga. Looking at this situation, Xiaoba's face became more and more serious. It seemed that this was the place where the incident happened. Keep looking, they will definitely not dare to throw the body into the sea. After a while, after 6 people searched, they finally found the bones of the 3 companions under an orange tree. The squad leader carefully removed the loose soil, but what he saw in front of him shocked him. The squad leader was so frightened that he immediately retreated dozens of meters, breaking out in cold sweat. Seeing this, Xiaoba couldn't help but stepped forward out of curiosity, only to see the corpses of 3 fishmen buried in the soil. But compared to corpses, they were more like skeletons. Because the meat has been trimmed cleanly. Xiaoba's pupils were shaking. It was obvious that these 3 fishmen had suffered an extremely cruel attack. The next moment, Xiaoba clenched his fists angrily, his heart filled with hatred for the murderer. Boss Eren is right, human beings have always been evil, they. Just when Xiaoba was angry, a voice came from above his head. It turned out to be Tren and Li Jing. At this time, Tren was squatting on a high stone in the orange garden, while Li Jing stood silently beside him. Those bones that have been cooked in soup are not delicious, and they have been cooked for such a long time. Tren looked at these fishmen and said with a smile, especially Xiaoba, who was very impressed by this octopus man. Did you do it? The squad leader also came to his senses at this time. His eyes were full of anger, as if he was about to spit out fire, and he glared at Teren. You kill them. Xiaoba also raised his head and stared at the 2 people diagonally above. So what? Teren's tone was calm and gentle, as if this was a normal thing. The weak should be killed and oppressed, while the strong can do whatever they want. Isn't this what your boss Eren meant? Otherwise, why would he come all the way to this small corner of the East China Sea? He is acting arrogantly, am I right? Boss Eren is different. Xiaoba gritted his teeth in anger when he heard Tren's words. At this time, the team leader directly threw the harpoon in his hand at Teren and shouted, You hateful human being, how dare you kill my partner? Today, I will make you pay for your crimes. Looking at the incoming harpoon, Tren was not afraid. He jumped lightly, jumped off the stone, and landed firmly on the ground. Everyone saw it, they were the ones who made the move first. So, Tren chuckled, drew his sword in an instant, and slashed with one step. Before the captain could react, he felt a warmth flowing from his chest, and then his eyes turned white and he fell straight down. Phew. Tren flicked the gambling sword and put it back into its sheath. Now, although he is not very powerful, relying on his thunder-tempered body, he still has no problem bullying monsters. Seeing his subordinate falling in front of him like this, Xiaoba's expression became even more ferocious. He motioned to the fishman behind him to hand the sword to him. The remaining murlocs also threw their swords to Hachi. Prepare to die. Chapter 26 Sword Style Xiaoba. Advertise here. 6 Swordsman Style Xiao Hachi Ginseng. I saw Xiao Hachi's 6 hands each holding a sword. In addition to his huge body, he is somewhat intimidating. Is it an octopus? Li Jing looked at Xiaoba, who was showing his teeth and tiger claws, and silently walked up to him. Li Jing's figure is definitely not enough in front of Xiaoba, and Xiaoba also chuckles when he looks at this middle-aged man. Uncle, I'm old, why bother? After saying this, Xiaoba looked at the single sword on Li Jing's waist and sneered even more. 1 sword style. I'm a 6 sword style. Xiaoba said, waving the sword in his hand. This also means that a human swordsman will never be able to defeat me. Ha ha ha. Looking at Xiaoba, Li Jing laughed, then raised his eyes and said, then I want to see what's going on, or I won't draw the sword. Don't draw a sword. Hey, uncle, don't be too confident, I'm a 6 sword style. I will surprise you, I will scare you, I will make you tremble. Then give it a try. No, this uncle is so calm. Could it be that he is not a swordsman but a legendary devil fruit user? Or is he planning to attack me while I'm not paying attention? Xiaoba stared at me intently. Li Jing. Li Jing, on the other hand, had a smile on his face, then placed his left hand behind his back and raised his right hand. Are you taking action? Xiaoba looked at Li Jing's raised hand and instantly crossed his 6 hands on his chest in a defensive posture. However, Li Jing was just making a gesture. Fishman Xiaoba. Ah, Bagayalu. Are you kidding me? Looking at BA's Li Jing, Xiaoba suddenly felt that he had been greatly insulted. Are I kidding you? You can think so. Li Jing still had the same smile on his face, because I will guard against all your attacks in the future. Come and see if your 6-knife style can make me happy. Li Jing didn't seem to care about Xiaoba's threat at all. Then prepare to regret it. Uncle. Looking at Li Jing's confident look, a trace of anger flashed in Xiao Baoyu's eyes. He grasped the hilt of the sword tightly with 6 hands, preparing to show off his unique skills. 6 swordsman style. Open the bow. The sword light flashed, and the sound of the blade piercing the air was heard. Xiaoba rushed forward and slashed Li Jing with 6 swords. Look how you can block 6 of my swords with 1 hand. Really? Li Jing faced Xiaoba's fierce attack and smiled slightly. Appeared. It was 100% empty-handed. I saw Li Jing's right hand, at an extremely strange speed that was invisible to the naked eye, quickly receiving the attacks of 6 swords swung at the same time, and resolving them one by one, as if with ease. Ah, you also have 6 hands. Xiaoba was stunned when he felt the force on the 6 swords at the same time. Especially when he was facing Li Jing head-on, he seemed to have really seen 6 hands just now. As long as I pick it up quickly, is there any difference between 1 hand and 6 hands? Li Jing still had 1 hand on his back and 1 hand on his back, with a confidence that made Xiaoba feel sick. Baga, don't underestimate the fish. Xiaoba snorted coldly, then put on his posture again. Rokudo style. Spring rice. Xiaoba's attacks became more and more fierce, but Li Jing remained calm and didn't seem to take Xiaobaoyu's attacks to heart at all. Next again. Xiaoba clenched the sword blade with 6 hands, his body trembling slightly. He wondered whether he had fallen into the trap set by Li Jing. Is it genjutsu? I heard humans are good at such disgusting things. Xiaoba narrowed his eyes and stared at Li Jing warily, not missing any subtle movement on his body. Your strength is very good. After 2 or 3 attacks, Li Jing was already sure that Xiaoba didn't know how to use a sword or that it was all due to his physical advantage. Tren. Ahem, I'm offended. Thank you. In fact, Li Jing's feeling was not wrong at all. Facing Hawkeye, the world's greatest swordsman, Li Jing almost passively activated the 100% empty-handed sword. Otherwise, he would not be able to confirm whether he was a match for others. The eagle eye would be divided into 5 parts, and his sword would be slightly worn. Moreover, we need to rely on the ability to take the blade 100% with bare hands, to defend against Hawkeye's sword so that he can easily cut him. But the fish man Xiaoba in front of him was different. Each move he shouted was louder than the last, but it was all just hacking and slashing. Hey, you guys don't know how to use a sword, right? Li Jing couldn't help but ask. What did you say? I'm a 6 swordsman. Bastard. Now let me show you my unique skills. 6 sword style. Mystery. 6 sword waltz. In an instant, the blade in Xiao Ba's hand flashed with cold light, just like a beast opening its bloody mouth, trying to deliver a fatal blow to Li Jing. The 6 hands were swung at the same time, the sword energy was surging, the sword light flashed dazzlingly, the blade cut through the air, and made a shrill scream, like the howl of an evil ghost. Isn't it just turning the sword? Li Jing's eyes flashed, and his body was as agile as a civet, and he easily dodged Xiaoba's attack without even waiting for it. Ha ha ha, why don't you defend yourself? Are you scared out of your wits by my unique moves? Xiaoba couldn't help laughing proudly when he saw that Li Jing no longer took over. Xiaoba's attack became more and more fierce, the high-speed rotating blade was spinning like a whirlwind, and the sound of the blade breaking through the air seemed to tear apart everything around him. Because your attacks are too stupid. I think if you have to accept such moves, it would be. What do you mean? Ha! Suddenly, Li Jing's figure flashed like a ghost, teleported to Xiaoba's side, drew out his sword, and tapped his palm gently. Xiaoba, who was spinning his 6 arms at high speed, suddenly felt a stinging pain in his 6 hands, and the sword blade slipped from his hand. Ah, you actually followed the direction of my spinning sword and scratched my hand instead. Damn it. I just stretched out the sword and made no other moves. You bumped into it yourself. Looking at the stupid octopus in front of him, Li Jing sighed helplessly. Bastard. Xiaoba became angry and stretched out his tentacles, trying to catch Li Jing. However, Li Jing easily dodged sideways, then flew up and kicked Xiaoba in the abdomen. Xiaoba fell to the ground in pain. He struggled to stand up, but Li Jing didn't give him a chance. Li Jing held a sword and put it against Xiaoba's neck, saying coldly, "Your 6-sword style is nothing more than that." Xiaoba's eyes widened. He didn't expect that he would lose so miserably. He was filled with unwillingness and anger, but there was nothing he could do. Damn it, I actually lost. Xiaoba lowered his head, then suddenly raised his head and spit out ink when Li Jing wasn't paying attention. But, I am an octopus. Li Jing subconsciously put away his sword to block. Xiaoba also took the opportunity to cover his injured arm and left the scene in embarrassment. Using his octopus sucker properties, he easily climbed over the house and ran away. My clothes. Li Jing looked at the ink on his clothes and felt so angry that his tooth ached. He runs pretty fast. On Tren's side, he pulled out the gambling wanderer, inserted into the chest of a fishman. Just when Li Jing faced off against Xiaoba, he faced off against the miscellaneous fish brought by Xiaoba. It's a pity that I can escape the monk, but I can't escape the temple. Chapter 21 The Last Scout, Omega Timo. Advertise here. Chapter 21. Long time no see, our second partner, the strongest sniper, the only survivor named Omega Timo. Captain Tren, I want to change my clothes. Li Jing looked at his purple robe stained with ink with disgust. Shall I go to heaven and get you an identical dress now? Looking at Li Jing, Tren sighed, how about you wear it casually first? No, a gentleman should wear proper clothes, barbarian clothes are not worn, Li Jing said righteously. Please put back the disgust in your eyes before saying this. Hee. Li Jing scratched his head, then walked to Tren's side with a coquettish look on his face. Our leader, Tren, is omnipotent, so why can't I, the little deputy leader, not agree to even a small request? After saying this, Li Jing blinked. When there's an island with a big town, I'll find someone to customize it for you, and you'll just have to make do with it. Tren pushed someone's face away. Is that so? But the material of my clothes is relatively expensive. Silk needs to be spun by silkworms in the Green Mountains, and gold thread needs to be from the coast. Li Jing raised his fingers. Li Jing, what's wrong? Captain Tren. Li Jing, who was interrupted, turned to look at Tren. Actually, Tren pursed his lips, these clothes can still be washed and worn. Our adventure group is still in the early stages of starting a business. As the deputy group, you must set an example. Li Jing. Looking at the emo Mr. Li, Tren continued to talk to him, because there is a more important thing now. Open black lens bracket summon 100% close black lens bracket. That's right. The opportunity for the second summons has come. The original progress was 85%. Then because of the fight between Li Jing and Xiaoba provided 15% of the spiritual emotions for this purpose. As expected of an octopus that can swim back to the grand route alone. Tren's heart was filled with excitement at this time, and his hands were trembling. Looking at the flashing summon button on the simple interface, I took a deep breath. What is supposed to come will always come. This is the first time that Tren, can summon someone with the conceptual level of Li Jing. That means it might work this time. After all, Tren, I'm your biggest fan. In addition, my mental state is so advanced that it explodes. So listen to my call, my second partner, let Kyusu bloom in the sea, Shira from Uchiha. As soon as he finished speaking, Tren directly clicked the summon button. Suddenly a familiar magic circle appeared, a ray of light flashed, and a figure emerged. Aaron Paradise. Xiaoba came flying like a gust of wind, and its 8 legs seemed to have infinite power as it ran back here as fast as possible. Something happened. Xiaoba exclaimed. Like a vigorous cheetah, it climbed over the wall, jumped lightly, and quickly escaped into the pool in the center of the paradise. Xiaoba, are you back? Black Belt heard the voice and cast his eyes on the water. Xiaoba also emerged from the water. He looked at Black Belt and the fishmen in the paradise and said breathlessly, 2 humans are very strong. Those 3 fishmen were brutally killed by them. I will take them there. All 6 people died tragically. Nani. The Black Belt looked shocked. I also came back with serious injuries. Xiaoba climbed out of the water, with sword wounds on his arms. He turned to look at the Black Belt. I fought fiercely with one of his middle-aged men, but he missed one move and lost in the end. Can I beat you like this, Xiaoba? Chirp. Yu Rencho swallowed when he looked at the injuries on Xiaoba's body, his pupils trembling. Or maybe, at this moment, the fishmen in the paradise couldn't help but be shocked, and Xiaoba was one of the 3 cadres under Aaron. He had a 6-sword style sword skill. At this time, the black belt came back to his senses and asked, "Are there only 2 of them?" "That's right." Xiaoba nodded. "It's okay." The black belt's eyes were full of confidence. "No matter what, they are still 2 people, and we are all here now." "That's right. Haha. Chirp." The fishman Chu also reacted, because today is the day for new members to register and allocate, so all the fishmen gathered in the paradise. "If they dare to chase them here, they will die in the sea." Chirp. That's right. All the fishmen were also happy. They have a large number of fishmen, and they also have 3 major cadres. Looking at the cheering fishmen, the black belt took the lead in expressing his stance. "Xiaoba, please lead everyone to prepare for defense first, and by the way, let someone investigate the origins of these 2 humans." "There's no need to investigate." "Why? It's wrong." The black belt just subconsciously wanted to say something back when he realized that the voice was coming from above his head. "Who is this?" All the fishmen reacted instantly and retreated to the center of the paradise. On the 3rd floor of the pagoda building built by Aaron, outside the eaves, Tren and Li Jing were sitting and standing looking at them. But it was obvious that Tren's face was a bit bad, like the kind of person who earned $100 from scratch tickets but didn't earn a penny. "Are you 2 the humans that Xiaoba is talking about?" The black belt raised his eyes and stared at the 2 of them. "When did you follow me?" Xiaoba asked. "Why do you still need to follow me? You are the only one on the whole island. It's big and luxurious, and even a fool can see it, right?" Tren smacked his lips. "Xiaoba, it's okay, they just threw themselves into a trap." Chirp, Yu Rencho sneered. "Haha, indeed, these 2 stupid humans who despise form have not realized what kind of situation they have fallen into. What's the point of having too many people? Then give it a try." The black belt looked at Tren and Li Jing, then waved his hand. "Kill them." Oh, as soon as he finished speaking, the fishmen in the paradise became restless. Suddenly one of the miscellaneous fishmen seemed to have stepped on something. When he looked down, he saw a green box shining brightly and making a beeping sound. "Hey, what is this?" As soon as the Ziyuyu man finished speaking, a burst of green smoke exploded and spread in all directions instantly. "No, this smoke is poisonous. Ah, help me." Bang. Ah, with the restlessness, several more green boxes were stepped open, green smoke quickly spread, and the fish people suddenly became chaotic, followed by a short green figure, holding a dagger, interspersed among them. "Water in." The black banded fishman reacted first and commanded, and the surviving fishmen also jumped into the water one after another. After a while, as a gust of wind blew by, the poisonous gas dispersed, and at least half of the more than 200 murlocs died. Many of them were poisoned to death, their throats were cut with a knife, or their brains were blown out with a bullet. "Well done." Tren smiled slightly. "This is what I should have done. I didn't expect to meet Captain Tren here in advance." A voice came from beside Tren, and then a short figure loomed out. He wears a futuristic-style special battle suit, mainly in dark green and black. The head is covered with green cloth and 2 small ears are exposed. Only the shining eyes can be seen on the face, and the expression cannot be seen clearly because he is wearing something similar to a gas mask. The upper body wears a tight-fitting battle suit, with complex silver decorations on the chest, and watch-like panels on the arms. The lower body is in black trousers, and the legs are also decorated with silver. Around his waist, he wears a black belt with a dagger on the belt. Name: Omega Teemo, from League of Legends. Abilities: Trap, Poison, Sniper, Scout. Strength: a collection of all the accomplished players in the Omega team. Close black lens bracket. Omega Teemo, the second partner summoned by Tren, the sniper of Tren's adventure group. Chapter 22 Paradise. Haha. Advertise here. At this time, in the park, a group of bubbles appeared in the central pool, and then Black Belt and other surviving murlocs surfaced one after another. "Asshole, when did you set the trap?" Looking at the fishmen who were more than half dead or injured, the Black Belt was very angry. This is the subordinate that his boss Aaron asked him to take care of, and now Tren has almost taken care of him. You know, Aaron ran all the way back to Fishman Island to get this. While you were having useless conversations, I had already slipped in. Teemo said, looking at the fishman in the pool below. Who is this dwarf? When did he appear? Chu. The fishman Chu looked at Teemo, who looked like a special force, and was a little confused. Xiaoba, didn't you say there are only 2 of them? The black belt was also confused and turned to stare at Xiaoba. Looking at the eyes of his 2 companions, Xiaoba shook his head and said, I don't know either. Because I fought against those 2 people, the little dwarf, and I have never seen him. Haha. Tren sneered, then stood up. Omega Teemo, the sniper rifle and scout of my adventure group, do you know each other now? Water iron bubble. Seeing Tren's arrogance, the fish man Chu shrank his long mouth and then fired a gravity water cannon towards Tren. Touch. Li Jing instantly drew the knife and stepped forward to block it. Damn it. Seeing that his sudden attack was blocked, the fish man Chu gritted his teeth. When Tren saw this, he didn't hesitate. He took out gambling, his eyes darkened slightly, and he whispered, "Let's start the fight. This time, I won't treat others to the fishman hot pot. Everyone, come on." The black belt also shouted with a fierce look on his face. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Jing jumped down first. The sword in his hand was like a ruthless harvesting machine, causing the murlocs to bloom flowers of blood one after another. "Damn it, are you so strong?" Xiaoba was knocked back with just one move. "Playing by yourself is different from Captain Tren's order." Li Jing's expression was calm, and he followed up with his sword. Water cannon. The murloc was like a crazy beast, spraying water cannon at Timo desperately. Unfortunately, Timo was as light as a swallow and quick in movement. He easily diffused this round of attacks with a few leaps and sideways dodges. A guy who has never experienced war can even attack so poorly. Timo once again cleverly avoided the water cannon of the fish Manchu, and then showed his special skills, took out the sniper rifle, and pulled the trigger without hesitation. With a poof sound, a poisonous bullet accurately hit Yurenchu's shoulder. He screamed and covered the wound, and then escaped into the water. "You can't win. Xiaoba is no match for that middle-aged swordsman. The black belt seems to be in a tough fight, and Boss Aaron is not here, he will die." Thinking of this, Yu Rencho walked directly to the paradise pool without saying a word. Heading towards the sea. Just as he was about to approach the exit, an iron gate suddenly fell heavily. "What?" The fish Manchu didn't react for a moment, but Timo on the shore was holding a dagger and cutting off the gate of Aaron's paradise. The corners of his mouth under the mask were slightly raised. It's the most fun to let the enemy hope to be destroyed, and the poison should have almost taken effect. Timo looked at the panel in his hand. Damn it! Water cannon. The fish Manchu attacked the iron gate frantically. It was a pity that everything in the park was built by Aaron with huge sums of money and the best materials were used. Just as the fish Manchu was pulling at the iron gate frantically, his perspective suddenly became blurred. What's going on? Yurenchu blinked his eyes quickly and rubbed them again. It's a pity that the blur is getting higher and higher, and the blood flowing out of the wound on his shoulder slowly turned dark green. No. That guy's gun just now was poisonous. Before he could finish his words, Yu Rencho lost consciousness and sank. On Tren's side, he also took the opportunity to rush forward, brandishing gambling, and swung the sharp blade in his hand like a gust of wind, killing several murlocs in an instant. Murloc karate wapow. Suddenly, a fierce wind roared like a cannonball. With his keen instinct, Tren dodged in a flash and nimbly dodged sideways. Bang! The air and wind penetrated the thick wall like a sharp arrow, with astonishing power. At this time, a black belt master wearing a karate uniform stood in front of Tren. His eyes were as sharp as a falcon, staring at Tren closely, clenching his fists, ready to go, as if telling Tren, "Your opponent is me. I am the 50th Dan of Fishman Karate." The black belt smiled slightly. Terran's eyes turned cold, and the sharp blade in his hand flashed with cold light. 50 steps. Then I will chop you 50 times. Don't underestimate the murlocs. Inferior humans. Black belt shouted, and rushed towards Tren like a ghost. High Su. Lower abdomen kick. Cremation downward chop. Double right punch. Upper kick to the chin. The black belt instantly launched a set of combos, all of which were aimed at the most vulnerable parts of human beings. But Tren relied on his weakened version of the ultimate freedom skill and was extremely fast, dodging all the black belt's attacks in the blink of an eye. Seeing that Tren easily dodged his attack and instantly appeared in front of him, the black belt's pupils trembled. If you say 50 cuts, then one cut is a lot. Tren smiled slightly, then raised his right hand instantly, and the sharp blade passed through the black belt's body, and the black belt screamed and fell to the ground. Tren took advantage of the opportunity and slashed him, and then dodged behind him and sheathed his sword. Self-created. Demonic winds dancing wildly. The black belt hesitated for a while, and then swayed wildly like dancing. So strong. Black belt's eyes turned white, his lips trembled slightly, and then he fell straight down. Even I can't beat him. The level of pirates in the East China Sea is indeed limited. Tren looked at him indifferently, with no mercy in his heart. At this time, in the paradise, water splashed in the pool, and shouts of killing came and went. Timo used his mobility to continuously fire support from a distance, causing a lot of trouble for the fishmen. Especially with the defeat of the cadres, the fighting will of other fishmen was low. After a while, as the last fishman fell, Aaron Paradise became completely quiet. Except Xiaoba under Li Jingjan. You. Daughter not from the East China Sea. Xiaoba has been going to the Sabayati Islands since he was a child. He knows the grand route and the strength of pirates in the New World. The strength of Tren and his group is completely beyond the scope of the East China Sea. You can say that. Tren did not deny it. After all, they are indeed not from the East China Sea, are not from this world. Tren is in the flesh. Damn it. Xiaoba gritted his teeth, then raised his eyes and stared at Tren, then looked at his companions beside him. Black belt was covered with stab wounds and his life or death was uncertain. The fish Manchu was also floating on the surface of the pool. The same was true for other fish men. The blood of the fish men dyed the porcelain white floor red. The original paradise was here. At this moment it has become purgatory. Kill him, Captain Tren. Timo looked at the fish man Xiaoba and suggested. these post-battle prisoners will have no effect at all. My poison can completely kill the fish men here who are still alive. The body of the dead rots. No, Xiaoba shouted after hearing the emotionless words from the short special forces guy in front of him. I know where Boss Aaron's treasures are. I'll trade them for our lives. Chapter 23 Black Pearl. Advertise here. Aaron's treasure. Tren raised his eyebrows. Yes, I know where Boss Aaron's money is stored. Xiao Ba nodded. Is that so? I see. Tren responded expressionlessly, but he couldn't help but think to himself, but even so, if I kill you guys, the treasure will eventually fall into my hands. In your hands. Hey, it seems to be true. Li Jing suddenly realized something, as if he understood something important. So, it still needs poison. Timo took out something directly. Wait, that's not the case. Xiaoba shouted hurriedly, trying to stop him. Killing us is completely meaningless to you. We can neither increase your reputation at all, nor will we be of any real help to you. Captain Tren, please think twice. His tone full of sincerity and pleading, hoping to arouse Tren's inner conscience. Summon 25%. Black Belt 5%. Yu Rencho 5%. Xiao Hachi 15%. Looking at the details on the system, Tren breathed a sigh of relief, then take us there. Okay. Seeing Tren speak, Xiaoba quickly stood up and led the three of them towards Aaron's treasure house. The so-called treasure house was actually hidden in the big building in the center of the paradise, on the bottom floor. Xiaoba opened the treasure house door very skillfully, and then lit the lamp inside. Suddenly the gold and silver treasures in the house were revealed. These were obtained from the village under Aaron's exploitative rule, so Tren is going to return them all. Fart. How can they be returned? These are all ownerless things. That's quite a lot. The corners of Tren's mouth raised slightly. Xiaoba smiled and said, these are all Boss Aaron's earnings over the years. Not bad, not bad. Tren smiled and patted Xiaoba's shoulder, then please move it to the boat for me. It just so happens that you have 6 hands, so the 3 of us combined can equal yours. No. No problem. Xiaoba took the order seriously, and then smiled coquettishly, then the other fishmen. I have no interest in them. Yes. Thank you, Captain Tren. Xiaoba said respectfully, and then began to pack the treasure. Captain Tren, where did we get the boat? Li Jing looked at Tren and asked the question in his heart. After all, even if Aegean said he would provide it, it would only be a small boat. Looking at Li Jing, Tren smiled slightly and said, you two, come with me. Immediately afterwards, Tren took the 2 of them to the harbor where Aaron's paradise was located, and then directly opened the warehouse, only to see a small boat model quietly placed inside the warehouse. Treasure ship. Black Pearl. As the name suggests, it is a treasure ship. It has all the functions you want, including automatic cruising, changing according to weather scenes, except that it has no attack and defense capabilities, and enjoys all the conveniences you want, etc. He has all the functions. Warm reminder. Only members of the System Adventure group can stay on this ship. Close black lens bracket. Treasure ship. Black Pearl was the gift that Tren received from his second summons. Tren took it out directly and threw it into the sea. He didn't even care about Li Jing and Timo, because they had unconditional trust in Tren. As the model was thrown out, in an instant, a breathtaking sight of Madara with dazzling colors appeared before our eyes. A huge ship with bright colors appeared on the rough sea. The bow of the ship is simple and clear, without too many complicated and gorgeous decorations. There is only a slender and straight ship pole towering into the clouds. The flag is even more unique. It depicts a brave and fearless little man on a small boat, heading forward bravely and riding the wind and waves. The picture is completely different from the flag used by pirates in the traditional sense. The entire ship is huge and is divided into several small floors and 3 major floors. The top floor is a deck planted with small and exquisite gardens and a watchtower, the middle floor is for the crew to live and rest, and the bottom floor is equipped with restaurants, laboratories and entertainment rooms, etc. This is the ship that our future adventure group will rely on for survival. From now on, we will call ourselves the Group of Kings. Teren stared at the magnificent ship in front of him, feeling a sense of heroism in his heart. I couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. As soon as Tren said this, both Li Jing and Timo fell silent, the Group of Kings. Hey, what's your expression? And Timo, don't think I can't see the expression behind your mask. No, the name chosen by Captain Tren is still very good. Timo smiled. Yes, I know that Captain Tren always has a plan and a way. Li Jing changed the subject with excitement on his face. Forget it, let's let God decide. Tren's face sank slightly and lost all color. I hope everyone will come up with a name. By the way, Tren and Li Jing will be the only 2 people on the ship in the future. At the same time, Xiao Hachi also moved the treasure out. When he saw the Black Pearl, he couldn't help but be startled and thought to himself, is this their pirate ship? It's really majestic, it really deserves to be a big pirate. As he said, Xiaoba walked to the harbor and was about to speak, but a long conveyor belt opened automatically on the side of the ship. It's so high-end. Seeing this scene, Xiaoba was deeply shocked again, so he struggled to lift the treasure and placed it on the conveyor belt. On the other side, the 3 of them also boarded the ship. The huge Black Pearl was like a moving palace on the sea, which amazed the 3 of them. Then, they saw their room on the middle floor. The reason why I say it is my own is because the door of each room is marked with a name, and those rooms without names seem to be enchanted and cannot be opened. It is indeed a masterpiece of the system. Tren said excitedly, and he opened the door to his room without hesitation. In an instant, the originally empty room seemed to be enchanted, and various items began to appear. Weapon hanging points, soft beds, cabinets, small refrigerators, all of this was based on Tren's instructions. Tailored to your preferences. Oh my god, this soft big bed makes me dream about it. Tren lay on it and rolled around like a child. The same was true at Li Jing's place. A room filled with the ancient style of the Shang dynasty appeared in front of him in an instant. The only slight difference is that there are some more photos in front of Li Jing's desk, including a warm photo of Li Jing's family of 5, as well as other photos of famous scenes in 100,000 Jokes. Of course, these photos all include famous scenes with Li Jing present. Li Jing stared at the family in the photo, with a hint of tenderness in his eyes, and whispered softly, "You three must take good care of your mother, and you will go back when you are done with this adventure as a father." Timo's room seemed to be tailor-made for him, and the height of the doorway matched his body shape. The room is like a Special Forces combat headquarters, simple and solemn, with only a small hammock hanging alone on the side. The other wall is covered with group photos taken before the Omega Team mission. Each photo is like a lost star. As time goes by, the number of people in the photo gradually decreases until only Timo is left. According to everyone, Timo stared at the photos of the team, his voice seemed to tremble in the air. Timo slowly took off his mask. He was still the same Timo, but his face was no longer filled with the joy of the past, replaced by heaviness and ruthlessness. "You have taught me everything, and I will never lose any partners again." His eyes burned with a determined flame, as if he wanted to burn away the pain and loss of the past. Xiaoba moved things very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, Aaron's treasure was swept away. The innocent Xiaoba, even if there is no one to supervise, does not leave a trace to himself. Captain Tren, this is all of Aaron's treasure. As the conveyor belt slowly retracted, Xiaoba stood on the harbor and looked at the Black Pearl, shouting at the top of his lungs. "Well, good job." Tren on the deck looked at Xiaoba with satisfaction, nodded slightly, and his voice was as loud as a bell. "In this case, I will fulfill my promise. You can leave, I'm going to set off." "Yes, thank you for not killing me." Xiaoba shouted excitedly, then knelt down on his knees and sat down to express his gratitude, as if he was afraid that Tren would suddenly change his mind and kill him. Chapter 24 Painful Aaron. Advertise here. The Black Pearl slowly set sail from the harbor of Aaron Paradise. The flag on the ship was fluttering in the wind, and Li Jing was showing off his new clothes on the armchair on the deck. "Oh, new clothes, my new clothes, ha ha ha. I didn't expect that each crew member would have the clothes they wanted in their wardrobe." On the watchtower, Timo held his sniper rifle and looked into the distance. Especially when he saw his captain and Li Jing, the corners of his mouth raised slightly. Taren looked at all this and couldn't help but recall the scene when he had just traveled through time a few months ago. Finally, he stretched out and leaned on the guardrail on the second floor of the deck. Now should be the real beginning. After sighing, Tren knocked on the guardrail and said, "Xiao He." As soon as he finished speaking, a dark elf that resembled a holographic projection sprang out. Xiao He is actually the intelligent AI of the Black Pearl, similar to the appearance of a ship elf. "Please give me your orders, Captain." Xiao He, the ship elf, stared at Tren and saluted him with a military salute. "Expand the chart." Tren looked at the little guy and pushed his head with his finger. "Received, Captain." Xiao He, the ship elf, nodded, and then a holographic navigation chart was displayed. Automatic speed control, destination. Rog Town. Tren rode the chart and finally stopped at the town where we started. This is also a very good spiritual and emotional harvesting point. Roger, Captain, the destination is East China Sea, Rog Town, and the speed is automatically fixed throughout the entire journey. Xiao He, the boat elf, nodded, and then dived into the hull like a fish diving into the water. Immediately afterwards, the Black Pearl began to turn silently and headed towards its destination. Summon 30%, Xiaoba provided another 5% to Tren because of seeing the Black Pearl, so the current progress has directly reached 30%. Zong will not change his wrong, and Krypton will not change his fate. But I just don't believe it. I don't believe that I can miss the third time. Tren took the time to look at the system interface and clenched his fists, placing his hope on the next time. Kokoja Village. A few weeks after Tren left, on the calm sea, a fish fin came quickly, and then a figure rushed out of the sea, like a fish breaking through the water. Finally, this figure landed steadily at the harbor, with a tall body, a long serrated nose, extremely sharp teeth, and ferocious eyes. Yes, the Fishman Aaron came back from Fishman Island, but this time he didn't attract anyone, because almost all the fishmen who were hanging around in Fishman Street were dragged away by him. But Aaron didn't think there was any problem. Anyway, he had enough subordinates in Aaron Paradise. I saw Aaron looking at the paradise he built, showing a satisfied smile, and then walked towards it. It's just that the usually bustling paradise was eerily quiet at this moment, which made Aaron frown. Where are the people? When the boss comes back, why are you all hiding in there? Aaron shouted. At the same time, the three cadres who were still recovering from their injuries in the paradise heard Aaron's voice, their expressions paused, and they looked at each other. It's better for me to go. With a black belt wrapped around his body, he got up with difficulty and walked towards the door. This, chirp, Yuran Shu, whose eyes had not yet fully recovered, could only see a few things vaguely, or he had to get very close to see clearly. I hope Boss Aaron won't be too angry. Xiaoba also sighed. On Aaron's side, after he finished shouting, he saw the black belt walking slowly. At the same time, he couldn't help but look solemn, because the black belt looked like he was seriously injured at this time. Boss Aaron. The black belt lowered his head and said calmly. This. Aaron looked at this situation and walked directly over the black belt towards the inside of the paradise. As soon as he entered, a bunch of injured fishmen were lying in their places at this moment, and they couldn't help but shed tears when they saw Aaron. Boss Aaron. What the hell is going on? Aaron was very angry, and the consequences were serious. Looking at the angry Aaron, the black belt walked up to Aaron, lowered his head and said, Boss, since you left, a group of people came. They are very powerful. The three of them beat us until we were unable to fight back. After Aaron heard this, he was furious. He banged the wall hard and shouted. So, were they all killed? There was no way around it. There should have been hundreds of fishmen in Aaron's paradise at this moment, but now it was unclear whether there were even 100 or so. No. They killed half of us. It's just that after they left, some fishmen were afraid that they would come back, so they all ran away. Damn it. Aaron was almost vomiting blood. He was just going out for a trip, but he didn't expect his home to be gone. After a while, Aaron calmed down and sat back on the chair where he usually sat. So do you know the information about that group of people? Faced with Aaron's question, Black Belt and Yu Rencho both shook their heads, and only Xiaoba stood up. They are not pirates from the East China Sea, they are big pirates from the Grand Line, 2 swordsmen and a short sniper. Coming from the Grand Line. After hearing this, Aaron, who originally wanted to take revenge, instantly calmed down. It's not like he has never crossed the Grand Line. Although he later met Lieutenant General Kizaru, he was captured after losing. But in fact, even if he didn't meet Kizaru, he wouldn't be able to make any waves, and he spent most of his time bullying some humans in villages and towns. Forget it, they should have disappeared by this time, but if I see them next time, I will definitely kill them without a burial place. Aaron spoke appropriately and harshly, encouraging the friends who stayed behind. Boss, what should we do now? These days, because of this incident, many villages have escaped our control. Even the rats of the 16th branch seem to. Human villages and towns are not in a hurry. Aaron didn't pay attention to this kind of thing that could be solved by just going there, but that, mouse, Colonel. Didn't I leave money? Didn't you give it to that guy on time? Aaron's eyes widened and he stared at Xiaoba with suspicion. Facing Aaron's sharp gaze, Xiaoba couldn't help but become nervous. He swallowed hard and said in a slightly trembling voice, Boss. Boss, your money. What happened to my money? Aaron frowned, with an ominous premonition in his heart. He stared closely at the three men in front of him, noticed the strange looks on their faces, and immediately realized that something was wrong. Without any hesitation, Aaron rushed towards his treasure house like a gust of wind. The moment he pushed the gate of opening, he froze. The place that was supposed to be filled with treasures was now empty, and not even a copper coin could be found. Ah, bastard. My money. My savings over the past few years. Aaron roared angrily, his voice resounding throughout the room. He couldn't accept this cruel reality. Those were the wealth he had worked so hard to accumulate. Summon 55%. At the same time, Tren, who was already at sea, thank you Aaron for the gift. Hearing Aaron's roar, the three Murloc cadres lowered their heads and chose silence. Especially when they learned that Xiaoba used the money to save them, everyone tacitly decided to bury this matter deep in their hearts. Just assume that they had already fainted at that time and knew nothing about the specific situation. In this way, all the fishes reached a tacit agreement that the money was taken away by Tren and his group. This also led to the fact that in the following days until he met Luffy, Aaron never left Kokoja Island again. Chapter 25 Calm Voyage. Advertise here. A few days later, the sun shone on the sparkling sea, as if thousands of diamonds were shining. A huge ship was sailing leisurely. Its speed was not fast, but it seemed extremely steady. The Black Pearl, under the advanced autopilot system, chooses the smoothest route based on the built-in chart. However, the weather in the pirate world is unpredictable, especially when approaching Rogue Town. Sometimes, the originally clear sky is suddenly shrouded by dark clouds, strong winds blow, heavy rain pours down, and the waves are like ferocious beasts, beating the hull crazily, making the entire sea surface rough. However, in the face of severe weather conditions, the Black Pearl will respond quickly, automatically adjust its speed, slow down to a safe range, and flexibly retract some or all of the sails according to the shaking of the hull to maintain stability. In this way, even in rough seas, the hull can still maintain relative balance, providing the most comfortable and safe environment for the crew on board. On the boat, Tren held a fishing rod in his hand and stared at the calm sea after the storm with a bored expression, yawning from time to time. Xiao He, how long do we have until we arrive? Tren knocked on the hull of the ship out of habit. Reporting to the leader, According to the current speed, we can reach the destination before 11 o'clock tomorrow at the earliest. Xiao He swayed his almost transparent body, then stuck his buttocks, turned around, and shouted. Captain, we've caught fish. Oh, let's eat red eagle fish tonight. Tren looked at the wildly shaking fishing rod in his hand with a smile on his face. Tren was busy fishing on his side, while Li Jing in the middle of the deck on the other side was leisurely enjoying the sunbathe. This is life without rowing, this is the enjoyment of a big boat. Li Jing sighed, then opened his eyes and glanced at Timo, who was tinkering with things not far away. Timo, let me tell you, when I first found the group leader, the two of us were crowded on a small boat without even an oar. Those days, tisk tisk tisk. Hearing Li Jing's words, Timo pulled the bolt of the sniper rifle in his hand fiercely, and then pressed an infrared sight to the left side of the muzzle. Li Jing, you have talked about your wonderful life with the leader and times. Ah, Li Jing smiled slightly, that's why it's worth remembering. After laughing, Li Jing looked at Timo, who had a small body but was fully equipped. Then he closed his eyes and enjoyed the sun, and said calmly, Timo, you have become. In the identity setting of the system, all team members are known to each other. After hearing this sentence, Timo stopped moving his hands and said, in the days when I was alone, I did many not so glorious things, and at the same time, I learned many things. In other words, the war didn't change me, I changed the war. After saying that, Timo took out his necklace from his chest, which is the symbol of Omega Team. Timo tightened his grip slightly, everyone has a clock, but only mine still ticks. Timo. Looking at Timo's exposed eyes, Li Jing opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. I'll go up first. Timo glanced at Li Jing, then walked to the observation deck of the Black Pearl. It's safe now, why don't you come and enjoy some sunbathing with me? I am a sniper rifle and a scout in the regiment. This is my mission, and the observation deck is also very cozy. There are soft sofas, refrigerators, water, and snacks. After speaking, Timo gently pulled it, and it hung down. The rope was pulled up immediately. Are the conditions above so good? After listening to Timo's words, Li Jing was stunned. At the same time, Tren, who was fishing on the side of the boat, suddenly swung his fishing rod. Damn, that fish is just following the boat. Why are you teasing me? Li Jing brought me the water pumping equipment. Quote. Captain, this is the sea. Xiao He, the chubby boat elf, explained. Damn it, what the hell? Tren was so angry that he turned over and jumped into the sea. No, why did Captain Tren go into the sea? No way. Li Jing saw Tren going into the sea, bah. Jumping into the sea, he ran to the guardrail and shouted. After a while, a red eagle fish about 6 meters long was fluttering on the deck. Tren took off his soaked top, wore shorts, and put his hands on his hips. I will stew you today. By the way, neither Timo nor Li Jing can cook, so Tren does most of the cooking himself, but the effect is only edible, even if the kitchen is fully prepared. Captain, the fish didn't seem that big just now. Xiao He, the boat elf, looked at the big fish and touched his chin. Really? Tren smiled slightly, and then a certain elf was pressed back. While Tren and Li Jing were discussing how to deal with the fish tonight, Timo on the watchtower noticed the situation not far away. Is it coming towards us? Looking at the black spot not far away, Timo too conveniently set up the sniper rifle and used the adjustable magnification on it to slowly zoom in. Immediately afterwards, a medium-sized pirate ship clearly appeared in Timo's eyes. Pirates. Seeing this, Timo raised his eyes and looked upwards. His eyes were immediately attracted to the pirate flag opposite. It was a flag with a skull pierced by shark teeth. Sharktooth pirates. Timo thought to himself. As a scout, he had been paying attention to all the wanted pirate notices sent by Seabird recently, and carefully collected them. Timo rummaged among the papers behind him for a while, and finally picked up one of them. On this wanted poster, there is a picture of a bearded man holding a long serrated tooth. He is the Shark-Tooth Shrike, and his bounty is as high as 21 million belly. Staring at the wanted poster, Timo did not immediately remind Tren and Li Jing because he was not yet sure of the other party's intentions. Whether they were passing by chance or deliberately targeting the Black Pearl. At the same time, on the other side, on the Shark-Tooth pirates, Shrike, the captain, was standing on the bow of the ship, staring at a huge ship not far away. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, revealing a sly look. Smile. How is it? Shrike turned to a pirate holding a scimitar and asked. Captain, looking at the other party's flag, it doesn't look like a pirate group. The pirate replied with a smile. Oh, really? Shrike fell into deep thought after hearing this, but soon he raised the long serrated knife in his hand again and said decisively. Anyway, since we are about to embark on the grand route, let's enjoy this last craziness first. Get the ship closer and get the gunners ready. Yes. Upon hearing the captain's order, the members of the Sharktooth pirates shouted excitedly. They all know that a ship as large as the Black Pearl either belongs to a powerful pirate group or is a merchant ship filled with treasures.